Two cases for the motion to travel, but it's the same defendant. He's trying to go to Mexico. His grandmother just passed away. Was with his family. He said, well, all of her affairs. And then,
Is a bond case?
yes, ma'am.
He has one or two cases?
Two cases.
This guy, are they over here now?
Yeah.
And that's a motion to set on William Salazar for his he was in Comal County. I guess it was a post indictment warrant. So he's in custody now. It's in his motion in a different county, Delaware County. So we just need a bond set. Any bond that you feel is reasonable in the case.
How come the judge there is setting the bond?
I don't know.
And
But he was
there's
for sure magistrated over there. I don't know if maybe they're just waiting to have him transferred over here before they set a bond, but they're not setting it.
Who would make the bond though?
Like for him, I guess I don't know if Mr. Salazar probably in communications with family for him. I can maybe assist with that. But at this point in time, I guess
It's not listed here.
this issue.
I'm trying to look it up.
What was it called?
It's very 2022 7749. It's very temperamental.
I think it was just because he was like in such a hurry to get it because he got there. Oh, I guess the warrant is still not resolved.
It's not coming up. Yeah. When he gets booked on the warrant, they usually enter that into TCIC and CIC. But if it's not, the booking is what opens everything up. Shows your appearance in county.
2022 7749.
Yeah. Can't open
Well, I was looking on air system. Are you on Lugo?
it. No, it's not Mocha, but it's our file 360. Can you ask the clerks to see what the case is for? Because under SB6, they have to get magistrated and they have to give an SR report. And so my bond would only be a recommendation.
Oh, I see.
The magistrate would still be free to change it. For
You're talking about the magistrate over there too?
any magistrate who sets bonds in Texas under SB6 because we have to.
Okay, so you just need to know what the charge is?
Leave it in my box, Mario. Yeah, tell the clerks to put your motion and the indictment in my box.
Thank you.
We ready? State, who's your next witness?
State calls Josh Lugo to the stand.
Did you get sworn?
Mine yesterday morning.
Joshua
Lugo.
Lugo?
Oh. So now
I don't know, he was one of the people on my lap.
like right up on it. All right. Okay. Oh, wait.
108? Deputy Lugo, could you introduce yourself to the court and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Sure. My name is
Hang
Deputy
on,
Lugo.
Oscar, 107, I don't have anything marked.
I have something marked as 107.
Oh, yes, I don't think we admitted 107.
Yeah.
Okay, so 108, I apologize for the interruption.
Then at this time, state moves to admit State's Exhibit 107. It was the same as 106, but a different deputy.
I didn't think it was the same as 106.
It's a different deputy, like the contextually is the same
It's the same type.
information.
O'Neill saying he moved the haste or seen haste.
Correct.
No objection.
107 is received in evidence. So you're on 108, State.
Thank you. Deputy Lugo, could you introduce yourself to the court and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Sure. My name is Deputy Lugo. Last name is Lugo.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a Bexar County Constable officer.
And where do you work?
7723 Gilbo Constable's Office, Bexar County.
So that. And what?
Bexar County Precinct 2.
And did you work for Constable Michelle Vela?
I did.
For how long?
When she was in office, about 2 years, if I'm not mistaken.
And what were your duties when you worked for her?
I was in the civil division. I did writs, eviction citations, some traffic.
And when you say traffic, were you part of the traffic unit for some time?
I was moved around quite often.
I'm showing you, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Show you like the Marquez State's Exhibit 108. Do you recognize this document?
I do.
What is that document?
It's an information report.
And what's the information that you're reporting on?
The information that I was reported on this particular document that stating that I was not hazed.
And not hazed in what context?
Just in the meaning of haze, have I been ridiculed, made fun of in any way?
And who told you to make this information report?
Michelle Barrientes Vela.
What date did you make this report?
Here on the document says 8/28/18.
And so in making that information report, around that time, how long had you already been working at the constable's office precinct 2?
I was hired in 2017, so this about a year.
And on that document, it's asking if you were ever hazed during your swearing in.
It does.
And so just for the court's knowledge, your swearing in, when would that have occurred?
It happened when she took office,
Oh,
when she was elected.
so the initial time when she was,
Yes.
around what year was that?
I don't recall.
And then, state moves to admit what's been marked as State's Exhibit 108.
I don't have an objection.
108 is admitted.
Do you recall, while working there at that precinct 2, given an instruction by the defendant, Constable Michelle Barrientes Vela, to not speak or talk to Leonicio Moreno or Cristela Serva?
I do.
And what was her instruction regarding that?
Her instruction, which I remember very vaguely, it was not to speak to Moreno or De La Cerda, specifically them,
Did she say why?
because they're not part of the
our team. Those are her words.
And then, was there an occasion that you were at a funeral where Michelle Barrientes Vela was present and Leonicio Moreno was also present?
Yes.
And what happened at that funeral?
When I arrived at the funeral, I opened the doors to wherever they had the ceremony. As I was open, she was walking out, and I noticed Moreno and the Lacerda sitting in what seemed to be like pews, and that's what happened that day.
Did you speak to Moreno and De La Cerda?
I sure did. After the ceremony, we spoke in the hallway. We spoke outside the building where the ceremony took place.
Did she become aware? Did Michelle Barrientes Vela become aware that you had spoken to them at this funeral?
She did.
How do you know she became aware of that?
I brought it to her attention. I noticed I was being treated a little different, so I exercised my chain of command to talk to her.
And so when you say that you noticed that you were being treated differently, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, we'll give it up 37 minutes.
Overruled.
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean is, me as an officer, I would work part-times. I would submit a permission to work these part-times. And after that date, they were revoked the very next day.
And who was in control of revoking your part-time?
Michelle Barrientes Vela.
Can we just object, is there objection, there's no notice, at least if there can be acknowledged on the record from the state that they have not provided notice of this incident specifically. So the appellate record is clear that, I'm telling the truth when I said there's no notice at all in any of these documents, under their circumstances.
What's your response statement?
State's argument would be that it's contextual to the official oppression allegations, in that anyone that deals with Leonicio Moreno or Crystal Lacerda would be subject to repercussions and retaliation in the form of the elected constable. And because of that, that then alienated both Leonicio Moreno and Crystal Lacerda while they're during their employment at Precinct 2. So therefore, if there's people who now are knowing, hey, I cannot speak to those guys because of X, Y, and Z, so they go now and hide themselves. So this is contextual to those two cases.
Your Honor, and what I would say is that only applies under 404B, which only applies when they're trying those cases in their case of cheat. This is not a case of cheat. They can't contextualize all the punishment evidence as well. Or otherwise it will swallow up 37 or 7. Basically, functionally, I just haven't been noticed or really.
We gave 38707 notice with regards to that we would be speaking about the official oppression cases.
Yeah, it's overruled.
So the defendant was ultimately in charge of your work permits?
Yes, she had sole control over what gets approved or denied.
What ultimately happened with your work permits?
Like I mentioned, the next day in the morning doing roll call, I was notified that any work permits outside Bexar County are revoked, and that affected me directly.
Did you ever speak to the defendant about this?
I did. When I used the chain of command, nobody knew why it was being revoked. So initially I made myself to her office, and I asked her directly if I'm being punished or I need to correct my behavior. And she told me it's because she doesn't want me to leak information to Leonicio or De La Cerda.
Sorry, Can I just clarify, that was the response to why your part-time approval was revoked?
Yes, because she was aware that I was at the funeral, and she thought I was. She knew I was friends with Dionisio and Moreno. I mean Dionisio and De La Cerda, and she wanted no part of me talking to them. She made it clear in roll call. But it was unexpected for me to know that Dionisio and De La Cerda were attending the funeral.
Based on did you ever receive any third-party threats of violence, death threats, assaults, based on any filings that Dionisio Moreno made against Constable Michelle Barrientes Vela?
I did not.
Did you experience any harassment or retaliation? Scratch that question.
What was the question?
I scratched it. I
Oh.
which was- So you testified that your job duties were mainly the civil process functions of the constable's office. Based on any filings that Dionisio Moreno made against Constable Vela, was the result of those filings, did that have any impact on your functions of performing your duties of civil process or any other job duties while you were employed with the Constable Precinct 2's office?
No, not whatsoever.
Did you have to take any extra precautionary measures on duty or off duty because of any threats made against you or the agency as a result of any filings made by Dionisio Moreno against Constable Vela?
No, sir.
While you were working at Precinct 2, did you see Dionisio Moreno required to wear a different uniform than the ones issued to the other deputies of the Precinct 2 office?
No, I did see De La Cerda wearing something that said bailiff on his back.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. You saw Chris De La Cerda wear a security shirt or a different type of uniform?
Yes, it said bailiff on his back.
Based on what and you testified that you saw Dionisio Moreno and Chris De La Cerda as friends of yours. Did you feel that your job and your employment could be in jeopardy if you remained friends with them?
Yes, I felt like I was given a choice: be friends or have your job not being questioned or secluded from or treated like Dionisio or De La Cerda.
Absolutely.
Okay, were you actually given that choice? Did somebody call you and say, either be friends with them, or you won't, and not be a deputy, or be a deputy and not be friends? Is that actually ever, that was told to you?
What was told to me in roll call by Michelle Barrientes Vela was not to speak with him, and if we make that choice, that we make the same choice as they did, which was break the law.
Well, I mean, they did break. Well, at least Moreno did. You were aware of that. He got fired for lying on his key code. Did you know that?
No.
See, I mean, and that's the thing. There was stuff about them that you didn't know, or you're saying that you don't know. But he was fired for lying about his T code training. And then T code itself wrote a disciplinary in his file, and he got fired. And then he got an auditor to get him his job back. So by the time you were dealing with him, you're dealing with somebody who's been fired for lying, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as a new deputy and as somebody who wanted to succeed in your job, associating with somebody who'd been fired for lying might not be a good thing for you. You'd agree with that?
Yes, but just to answer his question was, it was given a choice. It felt like a choice to me.
I know it felt like a choice to you. What I'm saying is that the issue and the problem is that you didn't have all the information. And here's what you're telling us now, is you didn't know that he had been fired for lying, right?
Right.
And I mean, if you hadn't known that would be something that you probably want to avoid that person at work, so that you didn't get caught up in whatever that he was doing to get fired.
I'm responsible for my own choices. I wouldn't get caught up.
I understand, but there is I guess at some point you can agree that that you were having these feelings without having all the information that you have now, today. Do you know when he was fired and then when he was?
Not the exact dates.
Okay, but you did know he was fired,
I did.
but you didn't know why.
No.
Okay, and did you know when he got his job back and he was?
Not the exact dates again.
Okay, but you did know he was reinstated,
Yes.
but you didn't know why.
No.
And so I'm sure you assumed that it was because she didn't like him and she fired him or whatever, right? There was no reason, or that's what he told you, I guess.
Maybe.
Okay, but in fact, it was, no doubt, everybody here agrees that he lied about his training at T-Cole, and T-Cole busted him on it, and then he got fired for that, which is, well, would you ever lie on your training to T-Cole?
No.
Right? Because as an officer, you're expected to uphold the highest in credibility and truthfulness and honesty, right?
Right.
All right. So, I mean, let's talk about bailiffs. It's a noble profession. You would agree?
Talk about what, I'm sorry?
Bailiffs. It's a noble profession.
Right. I've been.
It's honorable,
Yes.
right? The reason that they're here is to protect, I mean, they are specifically in charge of protecting the people in courtroom, like you and like me and like the judge, right?
Correct.
There's nothing embarrassing or humiliating about working as a bailiff.
No.
There's nothing embarrassing or humiliating about wearing a shirt that identifies you as a bailiff.
I never wear that shirt.
I understand. But if you were to wear that shirt, you wouldn't be embarrassed or humiliated that you wore a shirt that said bailiff on it.
I can't speak about that because I never wore it.
I understand, but you can speak about your feelings. Would you be humiliated and embarrassed wearing a
Judge,
shirt?
speculation, call for speculation.
I'm asking his own feelings about
On a hypothetical.
Overruled.
it. Would you be embarrassed or humiliated? I mean, you can tell the truth if you would.
I would.
Okay, then let's explore that. What is humiliating about being a bailiff?
Nothing.
Okay. What is embarrassing about being a bailiff?
Because no embarrassment being available.
Exactly. And so a shirt that identifies you as that, like I've said before, it didn't say dunce on the back, it said bailiff, which is what he was at the time, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just, to make it clear, I think that there's this vein that's running through here that somehow a bailiff is somebody lesser. And you would agree with me that that's not true.
That's not
They're
true.
law enforcement and they're important. To all of us. All right. So, about the precautionary measures, well, let me ask you this though. And, you talked to Ranger Freeman about this, and Judge, I'm gonna go into this and talk to him about some of the things I objected about. I just want to make sure the court's aware I'm not waiving my objection to lack of notice, but because it was overruled, I need to cross-examine on some of this issue. So, you talked to Ranger Freeman about this incident where you had been seen talking to Moreno, and then you said that your work permits had been revoked, but you said outside of Bear County. Is that
Right,
okay? But inside of Bear County, you were fine. It was just outside.
right.
Okay. But you remember when you talked to Ranger Freeman, you said you felt like it was a direct correlation, but it may not have been. But you just felt like it was.
Michelle Barrientes Vela told me in her office that it was because I was going to give information to Dionisio or De La Cerda.
Right, but when you talked to Ranger Freeman, he didn't say that. You said it felt like it was direct, but it might not have been direct.
Right.
Okay, and so I know that you're saying that now, but I just want to talk about the fact when you had an opportunity, like when it was fresh in your mind 3 years ago. You said it felt like it was direct, it might not have been. You did talk to him about the fact that she said she didn't want you to leak information, but now you've admitted at the time you didn't know that A, Moreno had been fired for lying, and B, that maybe you did that Lieutenant Meyer testified that Moreno was doing everything he could to disrupt the office, the constable's office, for an entire year. Did you know that, or did you witness that?
No.
Okay, but he had testified to that that's what was going on, maybe that you didn't know about, but that he was intentionally trying to hurt the office that you worked in. And you didn't know that, did you?
No.
Okay, but right now, sitting there right now in the same office that you work for, if somebody's in that office intentionally trying to hurt the office and hurt your ability to do your duties, you expect that your constable will take action against that person?
I can't decide what she does.
Would you take action if you were in charge? Would you stop somebody from intentionally hurting your own office?
Probably I would.
Yeah, absolutely you would. I mean, of course you would. Who wouldn't, right? And so, but these are facts that you didn't know. Maybe that they were going on in admin, maybe above. But at the time, there was a real risk that this person was taking information to try to hurt the office. Because by making the office look bad, then he could run against her and say that the office was bad. Not really mentioning the fact that he's the one that did it, right?
Right.
Okay, and it's just stuff you didn't know about, and I understand that. But ultimately, your work permits were never revoked for inside Bear County. And then outside Bear County, they were restored 2 weeks later.
Right.
Okay. I'll pass the witness. I do maybe have, I might need to recall him. I believe he's in town. If that's the case, then we'll be looking for it on the week of October.
Okay. Anything else?
Briefly, Judge. So you testified that the defendant told you he's not part of our team,
Yes.
and so the uniform that you're wearing right now, what's on it? There's patches.
This patch is a bag and a badge and my name tag.
And do all the deputy constables wear that uniform?
They do.
And just like the sheriff's deputies have their own uniform?
Yes,
And that includes also bailiffs in the courtroom?
it does.
And however, Chris De La Cerda did not have that uniform on when he was bailiff?
I don't recall.
Instead, what, did he have a t-shirt?
I just remember his back having the bailiff in white lettering. The shirt was black.
And then, going back to the work permits, during that time when, the funeral happens, and then when do your work permits get pulled?
The next day, next morning.
Okay. To your knowledge, had there been any complaints lodged against you about any of those side jobs, that you maybe weren't showing up on time, that you were late, or did something wrong?
Not once.
Were you notified of any other reason besides speaking to Leonicio Moreno and Chris De La Cerda as a reason why your work permits were being pulled?
No, and the reason I say no, because I asked the chain of command, meaning my sergeant at the time, and then the lieutenant at the time, and then the captain, and then nobody had a direct answer, but Michelle Barrientes Vela had the direct answer.
And that direct answer was what?
Because I'm friends with Dionisio and De La Cerda and did not want to leak information.
Castanon.
I mean, I'll just go back to that. You talked to Ranger Freeman right when that happened, and you told him, I felt like it was direct, but it might not have been.
Right.
Okay. So now you were testifying with absolute certainty, and actually this time you said even different. The first time you said, because she didn't want you to leak information to him.
Right.
But now you're saying because she directly told you, oh, because you're friends with them, right? No, that's two different things.
Right.
You would agree. So you're adding things that you've never said before from your direct examination to your redirect examination to try to show that it was direct. But you would agree that at the time, if you felt like it was direct and you didn't have a question about it, you would have told Ranger Freeman that.
Right.
But you told Ranger Freeman, I felt like it was direct, but it might not have been.
Correct. But now
Okay.
I guess I'm remembering now.
Okay, I know that you're remembering now, but now is 3 years after this thing happened. How many times you talked to the prosecution?
Maybe 2.
Okay, and those 2 times they talked to you about this and you knew that they wanted you to come say whatever bad thing you could say about her. That was their purpose for calling you in.
They didn't say that. That was a purpose.
Well, right, but you knew that they weren't calling you to say nice stuff about her.
No, I didn't know that either.
You thought that they might have been calling you to say nice stuff about Michelle Barrientes.
Objection argumentative.
They never mentioned what was I going to say.
Okay, but you told them and you talked about it. Did they let you listen to your statement?
Yes.
Okay, and in your statement, you heard yourself saying it might have been direct, but it might not have been, I don't know.
Right.
But now you are absolutely 100% clear that it was direct.
Yes.
All right. Pass it.
Have you and I ever spoken to each other?
No, sir.
Did I tell you what to say?
No, sir.
Castanon.
I don't have a question, except as we said, we may need it back.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Lugo, you are subject to recall. You can step down. Next witness?
State calls Deputy Morad.
How do you spell M-O-R-A-N?
M-U-R-A-D.
Oh, Murad.
Morad.
His first name?
Gabriel.
You were sworn in yesterday, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you remain under the same oath. State your name.
Thank you. Deputy Morad, could you introduce yourself to the court and spell your last name for the court order?
My name is Gabriel Monrod. I'm a police officer with Harlandale PD, and my last name is Monrod, Mike Uniform Romeo Alpha Delta.
And how long have you been a police officer with Harlandale PD?
A year right now.
And did you work for Constable Michelle Barrientes Vela under Precinct 2?
Yes, sir.
How long did you work for her there?
From 2019, April 2019, till 2021 after the administration changed.
What was your beginning date working with Michelle Barrientes Vela?
It was around April 2019.
And what were your duties there?
I was a reserve deputy. I went out sometimes with the deputies to serve papers, and most of the time I was outside the front desk.
Were you ever a full-time there?
No, sir.
Did you ever work any side jobs or part-time from there?
Part-times with the precinct, yes.
What events did you work?
I did 3 events that had the Catholic Church, and that was it.
Were you paid for those events?
No.
How were you compensated for working those events?
I was not compensated. We never got paid.
Did you know Chris de la Cerda?
Yes.
How did you know him?
I met him when I first started there.
Did you know Lugo Moreno?
Yes, sir.
And how did you know him?
I also met him when I first started.
Did the defendant, the constable Michelle Barrientes Vela, ever tell you anything about how your behavior should be around them?
I was warned not to speak to both of them and not to associate with them.
And who told you that?
Constable and chief and Castillo and minor, Lieutenant Minor.
And when the defendant told you not to speak to them, did she give a reason why?
In a way, it was kind of like in a threatening way, saying you really don't want to talk to them if you don't want any problems, so don't associate with them.
Did you feel that based on that statement that you conversing with them, speaking to them, would be an impact on your employment or your job?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall Chris de la Cerda being told to perform bailiff duties?
Yes, sir, he was.
And what uniform was he told to wear?
He wasn't wearing the same uniform that we were wearing. It was like a generic uniform, different than what we were wearing, more like a polo shirt.
And when you say uniform, is the current uniform, well, you're actually with Harlandale PD, so the uniform that you're talking about is the one that has the patches and the badge on it?
Yes, sir, similar to what I'm wearing right now, just different patches.
Okay.
That's the uniform that we were wearing, not Chris de la Cerda.
He was given a different uniform?
Yes, sir.
And then were you present on the last day of Constable Vela's administration?
I was.
Do you recall her telling you or anyone there to shred documents?
Your Honor, we'll renew our objection.
Yes, sir.
Hang on, when there's an objection, you have to wait on.
Sorry about that.
Renew our objection on the notice. We were never given notice of any shredding of documents by this witness. I'll remind the court that we had had this discussion beforehand in the trial when they called the deputy, and we, or maybe officer, but we told the court at the time that there was not any reports, any statements made by this person, there was nothing in any of the discovery about any of the information that he would provide, and additionally, they didn't provide us any notice that he would come and testify to the shredding.
Overruled?
Were you told to shred documents?
Yes, sir.
Did the defendant give you a reason why to shred those documents?
No, all they said is, here's these papers or boxes, and wherever's in the boxes, just shred them.
Were there other people present that last day removing documents or shredding documents that were not a part of the administration or employee at the constable's office?
Yes, sir.
Who were those people?
Her husband and her MJ, Mary J, I think they call her. And also, there was one more person, I don't remember who was it, but they were there.
What were they doing?
Some of them were actually taking boxes and bags, black bags full of documents and papers out to her vehicle.
And did you see the defendant empty any files into a trash bag?
There was a lot of, they were throwing a lot of stuff in the trash. I mean,
And past orders?
So you started work in April of 2019 as reserve, right?
yes, sir, in that time frame.
And now you work over at Harlandale with Mark Oliveris, who we heard testified in guilt and innocence case.
Could you please clarify that? I do work with Mark Oliveris, yes.
Right, the Harlandale accident.
Yes, sir.
And how long did you say you worked there?
Right now, it's been August 23rd. That would be my first year
All right.
of this year.
Do you know Mark well?
He's my corporal. He's a supervisor.
Okay. He's your direct supervisor?
He's one of the supervisors.
And you said your time there was spent, most of your time was spent outside the front desk.
Yes.
Right. And like I guess you said you had side job or part-time events at, I guess, the Catholic events.
Yes, there were events, which is, they used to call it the constables events. And 3 of those events were at the Catholic Church.
All right. Did you have to work a certain amount of time per month to maintain your certification?
Yes, sir.
I guess they call it hours work? To get your hours?
It's the T-code hours that we have to put in as reserve deputies.
And how much time do you remember a month?
I had to come in 3 days out of the month. Sometimes I used to come in a little bit more than that, sometimes 4 days.
Okay, and so when you were, so as a reserve deputy, the only thing that you can get paid for is working, I guess, like lane closures?
Yes, lane closures, yes, sir.
Right. So when, I guess, there's testimony that you never got paid, you're not supposed to get paid for anything but lane closures.
There was, at those events where I was present, where the people, they came up and they told me that,
You're not going to object if you're saying.
The same.
So here's what I'm saying.
okay,
You, as a reserve deputy,
right,
are not supposed to be paid for anything except lane closure.
yes, sir, that's
Okay.
correct,
Okay, that's the question I'm asking.
right.
And that's been mentioned several times throughout, and we renew our objection to those things based upon those, but I'm having across the avenue to keep talking about it. The
Objection is overruled.
Yes, Your Honor, I understand that. I'm just putting on the record because I've seen appellate courts sometimes say that I've waived the objection because now I'm speaking about it and not notifying the court that I'm still maintaining the objection. So that's the only reason I'm doing that. I do understand it. And then that would also apply for this next section. Well, I guess not this next section. So what you said was that the constable, Castillo, Chief Castillo, and Lieutenant Minor all told you not to associate with Moreno de la Sera, right?
Along with the constable as well, she said that.
Well, I think I said the constable first. Constable, Chief Castillo,
Right.
Lieutenant Minor.
Yes,
And what you said is it felt to you like a threat. You really don't want to talk to them if you don't want any problems.
right, that is a threat.
Well, it felt like it was. But let's look at it. Well, let's look at it from a different angle. Did you know at the time that Moreno had been fired for lying to T-Polo? That was true.
object
I-
to relevance at this point.
Your Honor, we're going to examine whether or not it's a threat or whether or not it's a valid warning to somebody they don't want problems.
I understand, overruled.
Did you know at the time that Moreno had been fired in April of 2018 or before for lying on his T-call in his training?
No, sir. I met him when I first came in and I applied. He was there at the front desk.
I understand. But so your answer to my question is no, you did not know that.
I didn't know that, sir.
Okay. Would you ever lie on your T-call?
Have I ever lied to my TCO? No, sir.
Would you ever?
No, sir.
Why wouldn't you?
Why would I?
Well, that's what I'm asking. What you said, no, sir.
Why wouldn't he or why wouldn't I?
Why wouldn't you?
Because I would never lie, sir. I mean, I have no reason to.
It's important to be honest,
Yes, sir.
right? And
Yes, sir.
especially as an officer, it's important to be
Yes,
honest.
sir.
Okay. So you didn't know what they knew. See, they knew that he had been fired for lying on his T-call, and he was reinstated by an arbitrator, and they were forced to take him back as an employee after he had been fired for lying on his T-call.
Okay.
T-call made a notation in his file that he had lied about his training hours and that. And so he was dishonest, and he was found to be dishonest and fired for being dishonest. And you didn't know that.
Okay.
Well, so here's my point. So it seems to you like a threat, but also, it could also be a warning that you're dealing with somebody who has been fired for lying and for being dishonest.
I'm object argumentative attorney testifying.
Overruled.
Do you understand that?
I understand what you're saying, but it was a threat. It's not something that I thought. It was actual threat.
I understand, but unless you want to change the language that was used, because it was important when you testified truthfully and accurately about the language that was used, correct?
Okay.
I'm asking you, correct?
Correct,
Am I
sir.
correct about that? The language you used, you really don't want to talk to them if you don't want any problems.
Right.
Okay, now that can be, you don't want any problems from me, right? And that's
Okay.
how you took it, right? I'm constable, you don't want to talk to them if you don't want any problems from me. It could mean that, right?
Okay.
That's how you took it.
Right.
But a reasonable person could also mean, if you don't want any problems by associating with a liar and somebody who's dishonest and who has been fired for being dishonest.
Well, she could have worded it differently, but the way she said it was a direct threat to me.
I understand that you believe that, but I'm saying if you just looked at it from a different angle of, except I hate Michelle all the time, and looked at it from just a different angle, you could see that it could be a warning that you're dealing with somebody who had been fired for dishonesty.
I don't see it that way, sir.
I
The way
know
she
so.
said it was actually a direct threat to me. If I said it to someone else right now, it would sound as a direct threat from me to that person. Okay? The way she said it to me was a direct threat from her to me.
I understand, but when we talk about direct threat, it was actually, if we look at it, it was actually indirect, because she didn't say, you'll have problems from me, did she?
Yes, she did.
See, and that's what I'm talking about. When
It
you
was-
said it earlier, you didn't say that she said that, and now you're saying that she did. You understand the difference? You're adding that to make it look like what you believed is the actual truth, rather than what you said.
3 individuals were there at that time. That was the first interview when I had to work at that precinct. And she was the first to say that to me. She said that to me, saying, if you don't want any problems, you will have problems. I'll be having problems if I don't want any problems. Do not associate with them. That was a direct threat.
I understand. I wrote down exactly what you said.
Okay.
You really don't want to talk to them if you don't want any problems.
Okay.
And now you're testifying that she said, if you don't want any problems with me.
She said it. She's the one who said it. If I tell you you don't want problems with me, I'm actually giving you that directive straight to you. I'm telling you that you don't want any threats
I agree, that's
from me.
direct. That's direct.
Okay. That's how she said it to me. It was a direct threat to me.
Except, you really don't want to talk to them if you don't want any problems. You see, you're adding with me, you're adding that onto what you testified to. And you're changing the meaning of it by adding that in on cross-examination. Hey, you could have said whatever you wanted to say. I wrote down exactly what you said.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
And you didn't add it to me or with me. You'll have problems with me. You said you don't want any problems. And now once I pointed out that it can be ambiguous, now you're adding with me because that's how you felt about it. I understand that's how you felt. But what I'm saying is, can you accept that somebody, that they had information that you didn't have about who these people are and about what they had been doing?
Ask and answer.
It doesn't matter, sir. I mean,
Objection.
Hang on.
Answer.
There's an objection. You have
I'm
to
sorry.
stop.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I should have said objection. Objection has been.
That is sustained. Move on to your next question.
The uniform that De La Sera was wearing, it was a uniform that identified him as a bailiff, right?
It was a uniform different from what we were wearing, totally different. It did not identify him as a bailiff. It didn't say bailiff on it.
All right.
They're not in a full out top.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness? State's 86. What does that say?
Bailiff security.
Bailiff security. So it did identify him as a bailiff.
Okay.
So when you testified it didn't, you were wrong.
I don't recall seeing that actual lettering in the back like that.
I understand. And it's okay that you're wrong, you're mistaken. But we've been having this conversation as if you could never be mistaken. And you were mistaken about that. It does say bailiff on it.
It's not that. That's not the one that I saw. It was different. The one I saw.
Well, it's the one
The one I saw just says security in the back.
Okay, well, it's the one the state entered as an example of what Fort De La Sera was forced to wear when he was on duty. But you would agree that there's nothing shameful about being a bailiff?
No,
You'd agree that there's nothing humiliating about being a bailiff?
I don't see what. No, no,
And nothing shameful or humiliating about being identified as a bailiff on your uniform?
no, sir.
Okay. And at the time, you were informed that if you wanted to wear a shirt like that, if you were working security or you were working in the area inside precinct 2, that you could buy that uniform if you wanted?
No, sir.
You weren't informed of that?
No, sir. I
But
bought.
you could?
No, sir. Nobody
Because
told.
reserves, they don't get their own uniform, they have to
Right.
buy their own uniform.
And other reserve deputies, we were wearing exactly the same uniform that every other deputy, full-time deputy that was on duty at that whatever day that they were working.
Sure, but he was working as a bailiff and he was wearing a shirt that identified him as such.
I guess so.
And the patches and everything else that identified him precinct 2 also. You see, you want to see the picture? These patches here on either side of.
Okay.
Okay. I'll pass.
And so you testified that you saw a different type of shirt, which was a polo shirt
Yes, sir.
versus the T-shirt that we see in the state's exhibit.
Yes, sir.
How long have you been a peace officer?
Since 5 years now.
And in your training and experience as a police officer, have you been around different courts?
Just at the JP court and over here.
At JP Court here? Okay. And have you encountered or experienced where deputies or deputies from the same organization are wearing different uniforms based on their employment as court security or bailiffs?
No, sir.
Was this the only time that you had seen this?
Yes, sir.
Could you explain to the judge, as a reserve deputy, what were your duties to the constable's office?
My duties was similar to a full-time deputy. I'll go out with him, I'll ride with him, serve papers, will help out the deputies while they're out in the field, and also the front desk and the courts.
And then we talked about the church events, the
Yes.
3 that you worked as a side job and weren't compensated for.
Yes, sir.
Those, what were your duties at those events?
Supposedly, we were supposed to go there and just conduct closures, but apparently it wasn't like that. They made us just park our vehicles and get out and just walk amongst the people, walk around amongst the people and make sure everything was secure and nobody has any complaints, or if there was something going on that we could react to it.
So when you went to this church event on those 3 different occasions, you were actually providing security?
Yes, sir.
And could you explain to the court, when you talk about lane closures, when you're assigned to one of those jobs, what are you doing?
Lane closures, when you're assigned to a lane closure job, you have to have a vehicle that's outfitted with 3 lights all over your vehicle, and you have to be in a closure, which is actually closed by cones, and a traffic company that has that part of the street closed with cones, and you park your vehicle in there with your lights on, where it's visible to other oncoming civilian vehicles, that they could see that there is an actual closure in the area.
And were these procedures and practices done at this church event?
Some of the vehicles were out there with lights on, but nobody was like at their vehicles. They were just walking around the event doing security.
So you were not conducting a lane closure?
No, sir.
So based on any filings that Lugo Moreno made against Constable Vela, in particular EEOC complaints, did you personally experience any threats, whether it be emails or letters or verbal threats from any third parties or people from the public?
No, sir.
And so you talk about your job duties were similar to a full-time deputy's job duties at the precinct. Based on any filings made by Lugo Moreno against Constable Vela, did you experience any disruptions or anything, or did those filings prevent you from exercising or completing your duties or tasks while employed as a reserve deputy at Constable Precinct 2?
Can you please clarify that question, please?
So based on Lugo Moreno filing a complaint against the defendant,
Okay.
Michelle Vela, did his action of filing that complaint affect you from performing your job duties as a reserve deputy?
No, sir.
And based on Lugo Moreno filing any complaint, EEOC complaints against the defendant, Michelle Barrientes Vela, were you required to take any precautionary measures or safety measures as a result of receiving any death threats or threats of violence, whether that be on duty or off duty against yourself?
No, sir.
That's what it is.
So, is it officer?
I'm an officer, yes, sir.
Officer. So Officer Monrod, the last question that I asked you, when did you start at precinct 2?
Around April 2019.
Okay. Just to have the court take judicial notice of this affidavit for arrest warrant, this was April 2019. So of course, whether or not you knew of anything that would happen on the EEOC, that was after the affidavit for arrest warrant had already.
I didn't know anything about the EEOC.
I know, and it's because you didn't start until basically after all of that and all of said, that was all going on the year before we started.
I guess so.
Okay, I'll pass.
No further questions?
Maybe step back.
Yes,
Is he subject to recall?
I'll say yes, probably not, but just, we'd like to have a subject to recall on the
Okay.
question of that.
All right, Officer Marquez, you are excused, but you are subject to recall. So just stay in touch with the DA in case they need you, okay?
Will do.
No, step down, thank you. Excellent. Yes, I'm gonna see if I can take a plea while you guys take a break.
Oh, wait, wait.
Very recent.
Yeah. Judge, are we allowed to use the restroom?
We have people, Mr. Simmons and Klein are back here. Run out.
Hey, Phil. How are you? Back to packing sandwiches? For lunch?
Sadly. For the purposes of scheduling, is it going to be October 3rd or 4th? Okay. So
Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know that little shop? Right.
I printed a bunch of stuff.
Mr. Simmons. Still nothing, Mr. Simmons?
We're on a break. What happened? You don't want to be
You won't be on
the
ASAP.
Toilet, Joe.
I'm just waiting, Judge, and there's a text from Gretchen's still working on the paperwork, so she's getting me the paperwork. This won't take long for you to get it signed, we discussed it.
No problem.
So I just wanted to, and she's next door, I'm sitting there with her. I'm just waiting on Gretchen to bring me the paperwork, and then I'll let Ashley know as soon as I get it.
No problem.
I told the judge, he told me, he said,
So we're gonna take-
hey, Mr. Simmons, you come around this way.
Yes, sir.
Take that.
Thank you.
Not right now. They don't have the paperwork ready.
Your Honor, did you just want us to be able to?
Yeah, because I'm going through a bunch of them. It's getting a lot. Now, doesn't that look like a sweet innocent little thing? He's like, he's trying to look spoiled.
You know, I almost got after my dog this
He's
weekend.
innocent all the
I
time.
almost got after my dog this weekend, because there was a big hound that just,
Why'd you call him that? He's a sweet angel. My husband just sent my husband just sent it to me.
I found a big pile of Lugo, that thing took it. Says, I know he threw a food. He was like shivering, he was like, oh shoot. Right. Huh? Yeah, I'm Jack Russell. And he was shivering. So like that, they are.
They're very tiny assholes. Jack
Like,
Russell.
dude, if you're not the alpha, he won't respond to you. Okay, no. Not with me. I'm the alpha. And like, I've established myself as the alpha. But you run circles around my wife, my kids. I said, you need to get on that damn.
You will never win against my dog, I'm sorry. My husband will go on the couch before my dog.
That's what my brother named Jack Russell. Hey, do they have a female? Okay, I'm looking for a female. I'm looking to breed my dog. Or I just had to get rid of her. I'm not breeding that.
It was right during winter. So the year that it was sleeping, we had a lot of sleep. So he stays outside. So my sister was like, hey, look, you can't do that. Put him in the garage. Okay. So put him in the garage, put the key in, we set it up, whatever. And they left the door cracked for me to get out there and go back. This idiot put his bed outside. My brother goes outside, and he's full of
snow.
He's full of sleep. And he's sitting there, he's just shivering. So they brush him off, he goes to bed. So the next night, same thing. So look, we're bed here, eat lunch, that's it. Next morning, same thing,
It's too hot. It's too hot.
you got sleep.
Yeah, but I know that. The thing is,
The sin God gave was jacked.
they're smart dogs.
They are.
Very smart. They're very solid, man. But my dog has fit 2 cats. And it's like he chases cats and how they like in the front paw. They just do this. I've actually seen cats.
So they call around whatever. And typically there's a lot of foreign language. So my mom calls it back. He's like, he had just lost his wife. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to can you bring it over here? He's an old farmer. And his hands are all rough. So I sit, just opens the door, throws the tree in the car. And he goes in there. She don't want to mess with him. Guys come over there with the guy. He's like, oh, really? He's a big old dude, big man. He gets that dog to hold him. He's just holding it. And my sister was like, he got weird. He's just, holding it hard, just holding it. All of a sudden, he said, since that day,
Because he did. He established himself as the alpha. Because anything else, I do that to my dog, because my dog, my bird was like that. And I just grabbed his neck, boom, like that, and it's coming out. And I wore him out. And I just let go, and I'm willing to start them out.
Mhm.
If someone wants puppies, it's like, have at it.
Did I tell you that I have identical twins in my class?
Yes.
And you can't tell them apart?
They're identical twins. And I think today I finally noticed a difference. They part their hair differently.
Really?
Yes. One drags it to this side and the other one just does it to the other. Like I keep staring at them, like, because I told them for now, you know, we better go on the right and Nessa on my left, and that way I know it's you. You guys switch it around. I mean, that's your attendance grade. So it's funny, like today I finally was like, oh, you part your hair this way, and the other one is straight up.
Funny is my brother and I are a year and a half apart growing up. My mom used to dress us the same and everything. So the way people could tell us apart was I parted my hair this way, my brother parted his hair that way.
Oh, that is so funny.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, because the behavior started acting like the damn thing, it's all over the place. So that's why they can set them off. I don't know if anybody has a experience like this one. You have to treat them, you have to treat them like they're a big dog. He's still training up. He's afraid of her.
He has a blank.
Yeah, that's fine. I'd just like to see. She gets $100. She doesn't have anything in her hand.
It's funny because every time I get up, they follow me. I can't forget them. Just being somebody else.
Ready? Go ahead, call your next witness.
State calls Maximiliano Marquez.
Was he sworn in?
I think he might have been in that group.
Maximiliano Marquez.
Yeah, Marquez. I don't know what she went on.
So I told one of the assignments when I started the class is I told everyone, go to your phone and I want you to make the inventory the apps that are on your phone, right? Give me a list of all the apps. Tell me if you downloaded the app. Tell me if you have an email. Like, what is the email connected to the app? Like, and they were all like, what? Like, how lame, right? And some people, like, I said, do at least 15, but some people had like 50. I have 100 apps on my phone. So, so I just did my top 15. So you should have seen today, we started talking about carpenter, which is the case where the government was collecting the cell site location information on your phone. And we were going over how phones communicate with the towers many times a minute. And how at the end of the day, there's thousands of, you know, that even if you're not using your phone, it's sending updates to the towers, right? And so you should have seen their eyes, they were like,
I'll let you know. It won't be until the 6th.
that's a Google function, by the way. It is. The things I'm teaching these kids, it is incredible.
Make sure you're speaking to that mic. You have to be right up on it. Right on it.
Officer Marquez, were you sworn in yesterday?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Okay. You raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Did you also get a copy? You can put your hand down. Did you also get a copy of the standing order in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you know your responsibilities?
I do.
to testify? Thank you, sir. State, you may proceed.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the judge and spell your name?
Corporal Max Marquez. My full name is Maximiliano, Maximiliano.
Okay.
I know it's a
Corporal, did you get that? Okay. And where are you employed at the present time?
I'm employed with Bexar County Precinct 2.
And how long have you been a peace officer?
I started back in Bexar County Precinct 2 as a reserve in January of 2018, hired full-time in April of 2018. So as of that time.
And before that, were you employed by any other law enforcement agency?
I was employed here at the courthouse, the Bexar County Courthouse. Yeah, and then I just transferred over, but not as an officer.
I see. So your first job as an officer is at Precinct 2?
That's correct.
And did the defendant, Constable Vela, hire you?
Yes.
And so you stayed a reserve for over a year?
No, it's about 3 months.
Oh, 3 months. Okay.
Yes.
So in January of 2018, you were reserved, and then you became full-time in April of 2018?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wrote 19. What were your duties when you first began as a reserve?
I would attend events at Rodriguez Park and just do my hours. At that time, it was 24 hours. So wherever they needed me, I would show up and assist because I was still full-time over here.
So when you say 24 hours, is that 24 hours a month?
24 hours a month.
And that would go towards your commitment in order for your commission to be carried by Precinct 2?
Yes.
And did you do all of your outside part-time events at Rodriguez Park? Or were there any other locations?
I do not recall.
And when you worked Rodriguez Park, those hours counted towards your 25 hours a month?
24?
I'm sorry, 24 hours a month?
Yes.
And you were not compensated for that?
No, ma'am.
And is that because you were a reserve officer?
Yes.
What were your, did your other official duties not the part-time work, but the official duties as a reserve, what did that entail?
Could you specify?
Sure, like, did you go out on traffic patrol, or did you do civil process?
I would do ride-alongs with some of the full-time deputies there and assist wherever they needed me.
And would that include traffic as well as civil process?
Yes.
And then when you became full-time, what changed in your duties?
As a full-time deputy, now I'm working 40 hours a week there, and I'm doing civil process, a little bit of traffic, a little bit of everything wherever they needed me at the precinct.
Did you do any bailiff duty?
I did, but further into my tenure there, I did.
Okay. And what did your bailiff duty entail? I mean, what are the duties of a bailiff?
Court security, provide security for the general public and the judge, and just make sure everything's in a good standings and nobody's acting out of order.
And did you wear the same uniform that you wore when you were doing other duties?
I did.
You did not get any special shirt that said bailiff security?
I did not.
Did you notice anybody else who got that shirt?
I worked with Chris De La Cerda, who had that shirt, which was a polo shirt that had the word bailiff, but it was incorrectly spelled in the back.
Incorrectly, how was it spelled?
I want to say a couple of the letters were peeling and hanging by a thread, and I know one of the letters was missing. So it was
I see, because it was falling off the shirt?
That is correct.
Okay, I see. What color was that shirt, do you recall?
Blue polo.
Blue color? How well did you know Chris De La Cerda?
I wouldn't say I knew him personally. I knew him more on a professional level, just working with him there in the court.
And because of your job, that's how you met him?
That's correct.
How about Leo Moreno?
I did not know him. Maybe saw him not even a handful of times. Did never really work with him.
Okay. During roll call or at any other time, were you directed on how your behavior would be towards Leo Moreno or Chris De La Cerda?
Yes.
And what was that?
To stay away from them. Do not make conversation with them. Just told not to interact with them.
Were you told that to treat any other deputies that way?
Later down the line, yes.
Who was that?
That was a former sergeant that used to be there, Jerry Loera.
Your Honor, Lieutenant Jack, we have no 3707 notice of this.
Withdraw. Sustain.
Did you know why you were being directed to stay away or not have a conversation with them?
We were informed by Michelle Vela and Anthony Castillo that they were not the greatest of people and they made poor judgment and to
I'm sorry, not the what?
greatest of people
Greatest.
to be around, yeah.
All right. To be around?
To be around and just their bad acts would kind of rub off on us or just to kind of stay away from that.
And did they clarify or explain what those bad acts were?
They would brief us here and there, but they didn't really go into detail with everything.
Do you recall being present when Moreno was sworn in?
No.
No? Were you required to fill out any type of report about hazing?
No.
Let me, Coach, what is the next number here?
109. I'm gonna
hand you what's marked as State's Exhibit 109. If you could just read that to yourself to refresh your memory.
Okay,
Is that your report?
this is my report and my writing.
And do you recall having to prepare that?
I do not recollect those events, as I was just on board, so it was quite a bit ago.
Pretty new, you are new on the job.
I was still new, yes.
Okay. But as your report, do you believe that that is an accurate report that you wrote?
At that time, yes.
What do you mean by that?
At that time, what I mean is because as I was still new, I felt a lot of the, it's kind of hard to say, but I felt like a lot of times people were manipulated, whether because they were new and did not know any better, and that can go for a lot of the newer deputies there.
Can I object to the vagueness of the statement? I object to the fact that I don't understand who manipulated, but if he was going to say that she was manipulative, then again, we have no 37% notice this. We're giving notice at all that they were going to testify to these acts. And he did have a statement before, but it was not, he didn't say anything like this in this previous
Yeah,
statement.
that's a statement on that one.
Do you recall why it was you were writing that report? I mean, only if you recall. It was a long time ago, so if you don't, that's
I
totally
think he already
understandable.
answered, he didn't recall.
Yeah, I do.
After reading it, he didn't recall.
And do you recall who may have directed you to write that report?
I do not recollect the
Okay.
time.
You had mentioned that you were directed to stay away and have no conversation with Moreno de la Cerda. Did you feel like there would be a consequence if you violated that order?
Yes,
And what consequence was that?
I was still on probation, possibly termination.
So you felt your job would be in jeopardy if you violated that order?
Yes.
Do you, I'm going to hand you what's marked as State's Exhibit 110. Just take a look at this. Is that one of your reports?
Yes.
Do you recall making that report?
Yes.
Do you recall attending or being ordered to show up at a location at Licio Moreno's residence?
Yes.
And what was the purpose for showing up at that residence?
I wasn't briefed on what the purpose was. I was just told to show up at that location.
And did you observe anything when you showed up at the location?
I observed Officer Duquette, who was a sergeant at the time, having a conversation with him.
And did you know why he was having a conversation with him?
Again, I wasn't briefed on any of that at the time. I was just told to make the location. That's it.
And were you told what your purpose would be in making that location?
No, ma'am, I do not remember.
Do you recall how many people showed up to the location?
5 to 6?
Officers?
That's correct.
And did you each come in your own vehicle?
Yes.
And based on what you recall, regarding the conversation between Moreno and Duquette, what did you observe occurring? If you can recall.
I didn't hear any of their conversation, but I did observe Moreno hand Officer Duquette his handgun, his duty weapon. There you go.
And that whole exchange, did it last very long?
No, not long at all.
Was it pretty much without incident? Like,
Yes.
no disturbance?
Yes.
So during the time you were employed at Precinct 2 under Constable Vela's tenure, and you were handling civil process, were any of those duties affected by Moreno filing any EEOC complaint against Constable Vela?
Any of my duties affected, or any of the office duties?
First of all, your duties.
I was never personally affected by it. No.
Did you observe anybody being affected in the performance of their duties based on Moreno filing an EEOC complaint?
I can't speak on how they felt,
Okay,
but it was a stressful place. I could say that.
okay. And did you observe any threatening emails, letters, social media, or phone calls endangering the lives of the deputies or the civilian staff based on Moreno filing an EEOC complaint?
Me personally, no.
Did you ever have to take any precautionary measures when on duty or off duty because of death threats to the agency due to Moreno filing the EEOC complaint?
I think just put in the line of duty, you're always affected with when you put on the uniform, threats and harm in the society. So it's kind of hard because you stay on your toes all the time to say that's the only reason you're gonna feel.
So you're just cautious as a law enforcement officer?
Oh yeah, yes.
But specifically, because Moreno filed an EEOC complaint against Constable Vela, did you, because of that, did you directly take precautionary measures?
For myself, I can speak. I would say no.
Past witness?
I'm sorry, are you still at precinct 2?
Yes, sir.
You said Corporal, right?
Yes.
Okay, Corporal Marquez. My name's Jason Goss. I represent Michelle, so I have a few questions for you.
Okay.
So if I have this right, from your testimony, you were only reserved for about a month and a half before you were full-time.
January is when I started the office. I was not officially sworn in. I was attending the office, and then I got sworn in at a later date, and then I got re-sworn in. So there was a conflict with paperwork at that time when I was in
Well, I
the
guess-
office.
Yeah, I guess, it's not a trick. I'm just, when you interviewed with Ranger Freeman
Mhm.
about this, you had told him that you started as a reserve in March 2018, and you were full-time by May of 2018. Same.
Again, if you're going off the official paper, then it would be March, possibly March, but I know I was there February, as I was working here and working over there.
Oh, you were over here.
I was over here. Yeah.
Okay, and where did you work when you were there? The Bear Mountain.
No, I wasn't here as a deputy. I was here as a civilian. So I worked a lot with district clerk's office and also the DA's office here.
I understand. And what work did you do for the DAs?
pulling criminal folders, whether it be over there in the archives, setting it up, boxes, folders, and getting it set to, at that time, Mr. LaHood's office.
Understood. So you were, when Nico was DA, you were.
When y'all request exhibits or folders of cases,
Right.
then a lot of times I would bring those over and take it to the 4th floor.
Understood. Yeah, because I mean, I'm looking at your T-bill, and it just basically just has your full-time starting in May of 2018.
Okay.
May 6th or
Yeah.
16th. But regardless, you were reserved for a short time, and then you've been full-time for a long time.
Okay.
Do you agree with that?
Not necessarily, I wouldn't.
How long have you been full-time?
Since April 2018. So, I mean, would you consider that? I don't consider it a long time.
Well, I just mean in comparison to the time that you were reserved.
I guess so. Yeah, you could say so.
I mean, we're talking about 4 years you've been full-time now.
Yeah.
You were reserved for a matter of months.
Yeah.
So you would say that 4 years is greater than a month or so.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, it's not a trick, I'm just trying to establish, like, when you reserve, when you're full-time. You said when you started full-time, you're working 40 hours a week. You said you knew Chris De La Cerda, and we've been talking about Moreno, but it applies to De La Cerda too. Did you know that they were both fired for lying on the people?
As I said, we were briefed on it, but I didn't personally research it, no.
And you said that I guess you were told they were not the greatest people that had poor judgment.
Yes.
Would you agree that lying about your T-bill hours, your training hours is poor judgment?
Again, I didn't do any personal research,
I'm asking.
so I don't know. I mean, Okay.
When they asked you questions, you were free with your answers.
yes, I understand, but I mean, I don't like to judge people because I think we all make mistakes. We all
Sure.
human.
But let's talk about that
So-
mistake. Have you made that mistake? Have you lied about your T-bill hours?
No,
Would you?
no.
Because if you did, would you consider that to be poor judgment?
Yes,
Dishonest?
yes.
Okay. That's all I'm trying to establish.
Okay.
Is that, we've been hearing about these two and about how you've been told to stay away from these two, but the reason you've been told to stay away from them is because they got fired for lying.
Again, I didn't know what they were.
And now you do.
So, okay.
So now, when you're looking back and you're thinking, okay, so I was being told that, but there was a reason for me to be told that because T-bill was put in their file that they had lied about. I mean, T-bill found that they found them out and said you lied about your training.
Okay.
Okay, so, I mean, that's a pretty serious, I guess, it's a pretty serious mistake to make if you're a peace officer. You would agree with that?
Yes.
Right. So, because in that time that this is happening, it's kind of right about the time that you're being hired. And one of the things I guess that you saw, you said it was stressful, around there, right?
Yes.
Okay, but you also had two deputies who have been fired, have now been reinstated, and they're basically unfireable now, and they can do whatever they want to cause stress within the office.
I wouldn't say that's where the stress came from.
I understand. But what I'm saying is that you, at the time, you didn't know that they had been basically forcibly reinserted back into an office that they had been fired from for being dishonest.
When I started there, they were not in office yet.
They hadn't
So,
come back yet.
huh?
They hadn't come back yet.
They had not come back yet.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is that, do you have anybody in your office right now that was fired for dishonesty and now forcibly your constable has to employ them?
Right now, no.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go off Moreno, I guess, yeah.
So he's still there.
Yes, he's still there.
But your constable now isn't the person that fired him.
No, she's not the one who
And
fired.
the one that fired him before is the one that's sitting in the chair, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you said that you went and you were present when Moreno's duty weapon was collected.
Yes.
And if your constable asked you for your duty weapon right now, when you walk up the stand, you give it to her.
But, I mean, what's the reason? Are you just,
She said, give me your duty weapon. I gave it to you and I'm taking it back.
that's tough to say because now you're just giving me a hypothetical question. You're not,
Well, it's your duty weapon.
Yeah.
Who gave you?
Well,
the
it's-
duty- Who gave you and who assigned you the duty weapon?
well, that would be the office, the county office. I'm employed for the county.
Right.
Yes.
Who's responsible for you and your duty weapon?
I'm responsible for my duty weapon.
And then who's
And then-
responsible for you? Who supervises you ultimately?
Well, it falls, there's a chain of command. I mean,
Sure.
okay, so
Who's
there's
the top-
several.
Who's the
It
top of
goes-
the chain?
It'd be the constable and then the county.
Well, it's the constable.
Yeah.
The constable's responsible for her office.
The county employs me.
I understand, but the constable is the person responsible for her office.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. It's not a hard one, I mean, and she's the one that assigns you the duty weapon, right?
She didn't assign it to me. It was the captain who assigned it to me at that time. But it is her office, so
We can make
yes.
semantics.
Okay.
But who ultimately is responsible for that assignment?
That would be the constable.
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, it's a simple answer. And so, at the time, did you know that Moreno had been misusing the FMLA system to take off?
I did not.
Okay. You didn't know that at all?
No.
Okay. And so, did you know that there had been, that he had apparently called HR and said that he was under some mental stress?
Again, I did not know anything that was going on top.
Right. And that's been testified to earlier. And so, and you asked for the reason, right? Like, what's the reason? The deputy is under mental stress and they don't want the deputy to hurt himself with a duty weapon that has been assigned to them by the constable. That's a good reason.
Okay.
I mean, you would agree with that, if that were true.
Sure.
And, when you went to the scene, he was asked for his weapon, he went and retrieved it, and came back out with it and gave it, right?
Yeah. There's no issues.
Right. No standoff,
No.
you guys didn't draw your weapons on him,
No.
said, hey, we need your duty weapon back, and he went inside and he put it in an envelope and gave it to Lieutenant.
Yes.
You know, you talked about at the end, you talked about the fact that when you go out there, you're always under some sort of potential threat from the public, right?
Yes.
I mean, your uniform acts as kind of a target for some people who would want to do it also harm, right?
Yes.
Or who would want to prevent you from preventing them from breaking the law, so they want to neutralize you so that they could, rob a store or whatever else. Your uniform and your gun and the fact that you are in the presence of authority can make you a target at times.
Yes.
Just like all law enforcement officers, and that's one of the sacrifices law enforcement makes for us as a community. You agree with that?
Yes.
And so they were asking specific questions about, whether or not, this or that thing that was happening is directly related to an EEOC file. And you said, you don't know personally, and I agree, like, you might not ever know. Like, for instance, if somebody walked up and punched you in the face, well, unless they told you that they were mad that their wife had been sleeping with a police officer or something like that, that made them mad at all police officers. You see what I mean? Though you wouldn't know their reason. All you would know is you just got punched in the face, right?
Yeah.
You may find out later, hopefully, if you can subdue the person. But my point basically is that there could be threats, and you don't know the genesis of the threat, or you don't know why you're being threatened, right?
You don't know at all times.
Sure.
That's part of putting the uniform on.
Right. And you're not responsible, like, I think one of the things you said is you were talking, and I like the way you said it, because you were really saying, look, for myself, for what I understood, no, but you didn't know about how other people in precinct 2 felt about the reason that there were Facebook postings or YouTubes or whatever else. You don't know why you don't know what they thought that the cause of those were. You can only speak for yourself.
Yes.
And so another person's opinion that Moreno had stirred up a bunch of stuff and was causing that, if that was their opinion, then that's their opinion. But in your personal experience, you didn't see that. I think that's what you specified.
Could you rephrase that again? Say
Well,
it.
so basically, it's the difference between you have your personal experience, but someone else's personal experience can be different, and you acknowledge that.
Yes.
And and they're specifying it to this EEOC claim, but really, I think in general, the statements made by Moreno that we're talking about, they're asking if those statements directly contributed to danger that you felt or problems that you felt with doing your duties, and you said no, not personally.
As I said, I can't speak for others. Me personally, no.
But you left the door open that somebody else could perceive that thing as causing other problems or issues with the precinct.
Possibly, I can.
Your Honor, I object, that's all spent time.
Well, I'm just,
Overruled.
and so, I don't think, we may need to,
Redirect.
No, Your Honor,
Okay. Corporal Marquez, you are subject to recall, but for now you are excused, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Our next witness.
State calls Richard Najera. Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So I give this to the director.
Yeah,
So not admitted?
Oscar, there's
Just the-
this other one that I did not. call. 109.
Oh, 109.
And it didn't work.
Don't. Who'd you call? What's his name?
Oh, Richard Najera. He pronounces it Najera. He pronounces it Najera. So that's why I'm saying that.
These we aren't admitted, so where to go?
Yeah.
I know he would, but that's, I'm very careful.
I'm glad you said something.
Yeah. Oh, we'll ask him about that.
Yeah.
Are you sworn in yesterday?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
You remain under the same oath, state you may proceed.
Good afternoon. Could you please state your name?
Richard Najera.
There you go. We were debating on how you pronounce your last name. I've told the people that previously worked with you pronounce it Najera.
You could say it both ways.
Okay, but you prefer Najera? Najera?
Najera,
Najera? Okay. Yeah, all right.
whichever's easier.
Can you spell it, please?
Najera.
And what is your current rank?
Lieutenant
And where are you employed?
at Bear County Constable's Office, Precinct 2.
And how long have you been a peace officer?
About 17 years.
How many, I'm sorry?
About 17 years.
17 years. And how long have you been at precinct 2?
For 15 years.
Where were you before that?
I was with Precinct 2, but I was a reserve officer
Why
for the 2 years.
Okay, so your entire career as a peace officer has been at precinct 2?
Yes.
And so that takes you back past several administrations?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so you were retained by Constable Vela when she came in 2017?
Yes.
And what was your rank at that time?
Maybe I think I was a corporal.
And And were you promoted during her tenure?
Yes, ma'am.
What were you promoted to?
Sergeant?
And is that how you remained while she was still there?
Yes.
And when you were as a corporal, what were your duties?
I was working the civil section, just maintaining the civil papers and the deputies that were working them.
And so you supervised them?
Yes,
Did you go out in the field as well?
yes,
And so you served process?
yes, ma'am.
Did you ever work any other duties besides civil process at that time?
Yes, I did. I worked in the warrant section.
Slow down a little bit.
Warrant section.
Warrant section.
What does that mean?
We had JP warrants that came through the office, or we had to go out in the field to find the person and bring them to the JP court.
So when the Justice of the Peace at Precinct 2 would issue the warrants out of Class Cs?
Yes.
That's what you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then, how long was it before, if you recall, that you became a sergeant?
I'm not sure, maybe several months after Vela became constable.
And is she the one who promoted you to sergeant?
Yes,
And did your duties change any?
yes, they did.
And what did they change to?
Instead of helping supervise, I was more the supervisor of the civil section.
So just one step up and doing the same thing?
A little bit, yes.
Yeah, but more of a supervisory role?
More of a supervisory role, making sure, again, the papers were coming in.
Slow down.
Making sure the papers were coming in and getting dispersed out.
I see. Did you know Leo Nicio Moreno?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he at Precinct 2 prior to Constable Vela's tenure?
Yes, ma'am.
And how about, did you know Christopher de la Serra?
Yes,
And was he also there before Constable Vela's tenure?
yes.
Did they work closely with you in your duties, or did they have separate duties?
A little bit of separate duties, but closely. It's a small office. We all kind of did the same thing.
So you knew them pretty well?
Yes.
Do you recall when both of them were fired?
Yes,
And do you recall why?
I believe so.
And what do you recall?
They were let go because they were having some problems with the administration of Vela and Castillo.
Okay. And was it Constable Vela who terminated them?
Yes.
Do you recall when that they actually got their jobs back?
Yes, I recall. I don't know when that actually was.
Were you present at Leonicio Moreno's swearing in when he returned back to work?
No.
Your Honor, is it the next exhibit number
110.
110? 111?
I have Marquez report was 109.
I have 110 that we didn't admit also.
For Marquez?
I have 111 like that.
It was O'Neill,
Yep.
Lugo, and Marquez.
We have 110 is the stuff.
What witness was it?
That's Marquez. He had two documents. One was the welfare check and one was the swearing in of the no hazing. And he did not recall the no hazing, so I didn't admit it. And then I did not admit the welfare check either.
Right, I don't have that one admitted, but the no hazing was 110 then, okay.
I'm going to hand you what's marked as State's Exhibit 111. If you could just look at this to see if that is your report,
Yes, it is.
and just read it to yourself to refresh your memory.
you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall filling out that report?
Yes, I do.
And do you recall who directed you to complete that report?
I believe it was Jerry Minor.
Okay, and what rank was he?
I believe he was a lieutenant.
So Lieutenant Minor directed you to fill out that report. Do you know what the purpose of doing so was?
I believe there was a complaint.
And what type of complaint?
There was of hazing.
And do you know who made the complaint?
Leo Moreno.
And this purpose of you filling out this report was to do what?
I guess just to ask us if we had any hazing going on, and if we didn't, to write a report about it.
And you did so.
Yes.
And were you ever hazed?
No.
State would move to admit State's Exhibit 111. Similar to all others.
I'm sorry, I just forgot to get this real quick. Lieutenant, I can't read some of your writing.
Yeah,
so
I was
gonna just ask, can you tell me what? Is that red?
Speak up.
I'm sorry. Read the definition of hazing and haze from the board.
I'm sorry, Jason, we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm just trying to see, like, what the words are actually that he's writing. I can't read his writing, so I'm just trying to make sure that read the definition of hazing and haze from the board.
From the board.
Okay,
They
board.
wrote something on the board.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay.
States 111 is admitted.
So what was it, Mr. Goss just asked you some questions about what you wrote. Can you explain what about the board?
Yeah, I believe what I wrote down was something about the hazing that was on the board. I believe, I don't know who it was, maybe there was something written on the board about hazing, or maybe the definition, I can't remember.
Oh, I see. So you're just referring to what you saw?
Yes,
Okay. And that particular report, you had stated that you were not present at Leo Moreno's swearing in?
correct.
So that report isn't asking you whether hazing occurred with Leo Moreno. It's just asking in general if you've ever experienced hazing?
Yes, I believe it was, if I've ever experienced hazing, or has hazing ever happened here at the office.
I see, that you observed.
Right,
I see. And your answer was no.
right.
When Leonicio Moreno and Cristina de la Sera got their jobs back and they came back to the office, do you recall what their duties were at that time?
I believe they were assigned to the courtroom bailiff and maybe front door check-in person,
So working security.
security.
Do you recall the uniform that they wore?
Yes.
Could you describe that uniform?
It started off in the regular uniform, and then I think it moved to a polo type shirt that said bailiff on it.
And both Moreno and de la Sera wore that particular shirt?
Yes.
And did anybody else besides Moreno or de la Sera have to do bailiff duty?
At different times, there was different bailiffs. At that particular time, they were assigned to it, so they were pretty much the primary bailiff.
I see. Well, if somebody else worked bailiff duty, was their uniform the polo shirt?
No.
So So Moreno and De La Cerda were the only two who were bailiff duty who had to wear the polo shirt.
Yes.
Do you know what it is?
I don't know exactly right now.
Do you recall being given any direction on how you were supposed to treat Moreno and De La Cerda when they returned to their jobs?
Yes, we weren't allowed to kind of talk to them at their station. They were stationed outside the courtroom doors, and then one at the front door.
And had you ever been directed to not speak to any deputy working bailiff duty security before?
No.
Were any other limitations placed on them while they were doing their duties?
Yes.
What were those limitations?
They weren't allowed to have their cell phones and use them while they were on duty at their stations. And they were asked to use permission, I think, to use the bathroom breaks, stuff like that.
Do you know if any other deputies that had to work bailiff duties apart from Moreno and De La Cerda had to ask permission to use the bathroom?
No.
Were you ever told why Moreno and De La Cerda's limitations were placed on them and not others?
No, not that I recall.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the civil process. Is some of that accomplished by mailing it out?
Yes.
And did there ever come a time that there was an issue with not being able to mail the civil process out?
Yes.
And could you please explain what that was?
Yes, there's two types of civil process, 510 and a 106. That requires the citation to be mailed out. And there was a time where the mail-outs were not getting mailed out. They were stacking up, and I can't remember why exactly. Maybe they were out of the mailing stamps or mailing, what's it called, where they?
Postage?
Postage, yes.
Is it like the machine that you run an envelope?
That is
through?
correct, yes.
Oh, and it puts a stamp on it for your postage?
Yes.
And so, so that was not renewed?
Yes, I believe so.
Well, how did you get the mail-outs mailed out?
At that time, it wasn't getting mailed out. It stacked up, and there was several boxes full of the mail-outs that didn't get mailed out.
And you say several boxes. Do you know the quantity in those boxes?
No, not exactly.
Do you have is it more than 50, less than 50, more than 100, less than 100?
I would say more than 50, close to 100 maybe.
Close to 100, okay. And on this civil process that is to be mailed out, is it time sensitive?
Yes, ma'am.
And explain that.
Well, after you had served a service on that citation, it had to be mailed out within 24 hours.
And do you recall how long it was that these close to 100 civil process envelopes did not get mailed out and sat around?
They never got mailed out.
They never got mailed out.
No.
Did you have any other issues with office supplies?
Yes.
And what were those issues?
It was just a lack of supplies all the way around. Paper, pretty paper, toilet paper, soap, different items like pens, pencils, they weren't provided at the office all the time.
Did you know why they were not provided?
No, not exactly. I wasn't in charge of the budget, but I'm assuming they were didn't have the funds for it.
That's speculation.
And did you,
Hang on, sister.
did you make any requests that supplies be obtained?
Probably not officially on paper, but we've always made requests for that we need paper or the items that we were lacking.
And were any of those supplies forthcoming?
No, not that I recall.
How did you do your job without supplies?
Sometimes we had to buy it ourselves.
you recall how long of a period of time this was going on?
No, I can't recall.
Were you aware that Leonisio Moreno was filing EEOC complaints against Constable Vela?
Not at the beginning, but I discovered that, I guess, after the ECO was filed.
And based on Moreno's filing of the EEOC complaints, did it take away from you performing your state mandated civil process?
Can you say that again?
Did his EEOC complaint filing prevent you from performing your duties with civil process?
No.
And were you aware whether or not his EEOC filings caused any threatening emails, letters, social media, or telephone calls endangering the lives of deputies and the staff on a daily basis?
No, I didn't. I wasn't aware of that.
Did his EEOC complaint cause you or any of the deputies in the agency to take precautionary measures when on duty or off duty because of death threats received because of his EEOC filings?
No, I can't recall it.
As a witness?
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Going back to the supplies issue, you knew that the constable at the time, Constable Vela, you knew that she'd go next door to Big Lots sometimes to buy supplies herself and bring them over.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're saying we had to buy supplies, she was one of the people also that was going over to buy them.
I didn't hear you clearly.
When you said that we, as the office, sometimes we have to buy our own supplies, like she was also one of those people that were going and buying supplies for the office at Big Lots herself.
Yes.
I'll go back. I want to go back to, the prosecutor asked me a question. She said that, she asked if you'd ever been directed not to speak to Moreno de la Cerda. You answered that you had been directed not to speak to him.
That's correct.
Okay. You remember when you were interviewed by Ranger Freeman back in, I guess, 2019?
Yes.
Okay. And when you were interviewed, it was a lot closer in time to these events than you are right now. You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And when Ranger Freeman was asking you questions, some of the questions he was asking you, if you remember, were about Moreno de la Cerda. Remember that?
Yes.
And he specifically said, were you ever told not to talk to them? And you said, no, I was never told that. You remember saying that to Ranger Freeman?
No, not exactly.
Okay. So your testimony today is that you were directed not to talk to them.
Correct.
All right. And Your Honor, Jasmine is trying to prepare just his statement. We have our unofficial transcript of it, but I'd like him to hear some words in response to that question. I'd like the court to hear it as well. But I'll move on with the cross motion.
That's fine.
When you talked about, I guess, Don asked you what, if you recalled when they were fired, and you said, yeah, you did recall kind of when it was, but your answer was that, like, they were having problems with the administration. That was your understanding of why they were fired.
Yeah, there was some things going on.
Right, I mean, but the way that you say it, it sounds like, you know, they were bumping heads, and so the administration said, you know what, you're fired. That's kind of the way it sounded like when you were.
Well, maybe correction is that I don't know exactly, remember why they were fired, like what they were fired for, but I know they were fired.
Well, they were fired because they lied on their TCO, application about their training hours. That's why they were fired, when we're talking about back then. And you said you've been a sworn officer for how long?
17 years, 15 with the county.
And you were part of that investigation with the TCO training hours and all of that was going on at the time. Do you remember that?
I believe so.
And so, have you ever lied on your TCO, your hours?
Me, no.
And you wouldn't, right?
No.
Because it would be dishonest, right?
Correct.
And if somebody were to do that, and they were a law enforcement officer, there would be cause to trust their ability to be a good law enforcement officer. You agree with that?
I agree.
You agree that wearing the badge comes with a lot of risk, but it also comes with a lot of responsibility to be honest and truthful.
Correct.
And if you do not live up to those standards of honesty and truthfulness, then you can be let go from your position as a law enforcement officer. Right?
Yes. I guess so, yes.
Sure. I mean, if you lied on a report and you were found out to have been lying, then that would make it you not a very good law enforcement officer. Do you agree with that?
I guess so, yes.
So I kind of want to go back and center it as like these two people were fired for that as part of this TCO investigation. TCO put in their file now, they have a black mark for lying about their training hours. And then they are reinstated, or they have their job back, right? And now, and Moreno still works there, correct?
Correct.
And so, what you have is you have two people who have had to be fired for lying on a TCO, and now they're forced back into this position. And now she now has to be their boss, even though she's fired for lying. And that was the situation that we're talking about with when they were the bailiffs or the security, right? You agree?
Yes.
So, when you have a situation like that, and you're now a lieutenant, so you'd be considered, I guess, part of the administration, or at least your senior staff, for sure. Right?
Yes.
And you agree that you would have responsibilities now of supervising deputies and sergeants and corporals.
Yes.
And and right now, if one of them were to ever do that and to lie on their TCO or their training, and you found out about it, you would recommend serious action be taken.
I would recommend action be taken, yes.
Yeah, serious action, like possibly termination, if they were lying about their training.
It would have to be investigated and then see what does that serious mean?
Sure. And so if it were investigated and found to be true, I mean, that's just as a lieutenant, that's your job now, is to make sure that the people under you are honestly dealing with TCO. Right?
Correct.
Because TCO is what all of you live under and abide by as your certification as peace officers. Right?
Yes.
And it's important to be truthful.
Yes.
And so you mentioned that when they were working bailiff security, they had shirts that they wore that said bailiff and said security. Right?
What was that you said again?
Well, when they were working bailiff security, aren't they impressive?
Yes.
We've been kind of using this as an example. I think this is David Sarah's shirt. State's Exhibit 86, it's been admitted. A shirt similar to that, it said bailiff security on it, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and you'd agree that there's nothing humiliating or shameful about being a bailiff?
No.
You'd agree that it's a noble occupation for a peace officer to protect the court and the people inside the court?
Yes.
Okay. And a shirt that denotes you as a bailiff, there's nothing shameful about that.
No,
I mean, you know, it doesn't say dunce on it, or it doesn't say light on his teeth hole on the back of the shirt. Right?
no,
Okay. And so, one of the things you talked about was, that they didn't always work bailiffs. Sometimes other people in the precinct had to work as bailiff or bailiff security as well. That was just part of the job duties, right?
yes,
But in particular, Moreno had been abusing FMLA and had been filing unauthorized FMLA leave time, and sometimes doing it on short notice. Were you aware of that?
no,
Okay, so Lieutenant Minor testified that that was one of the things going on. And in that situation, if, for instance, and I'll just use your experience now, if you have somebody assigned in your precinct right now, is somebody assigned to do courtroom security or bailiff duty?
yes,
And if they called in the morning of, said, I can't do it, somebody else would have to, correct?
yes,
And they would have to do it in the uniform that they were wearing to work that day,
yes,
right? So they would fill in for somebody in their uniform, even if, like for instance, they might not necessarily have a bailiff uniform, but that's what was going on at the time. They would have to fill in with the uniform that they were wearing, right?
yes,
You have to show up at 8 in the morning and all of a sudden, hey, you're doing court security today, right? So, you said they had to ask for permission to use the bathroom. Now, let's talk about that a little bit, because you've seen you've seen the work as a precinct too. Of everybody, I think that you're the person who's been there the longest, constables included. You may know some deputies there, some corporals or sergeants that have been there longer, but of everybody we've seen, 17 years is the longest. So you understand that when somebody is working security and they're in that post, that they cannot leave that post unused. You agree with that?
that is correct.
And if they do, somebody intent on harming the justice of the peace, or the lawyers that are there, or the defendants or the clients that are there, somebody intent on harming those people could come into the courtroom without being challenged, right?
Yes,
So, when we're talking about asking permission to go to the restroom, what it is you need to have coverage if you go to the restroom, and that's still a policy today for your deputies, right?
that's correct.
So I guess it's like asking permission. I mean, you have to go to somebody and say, hey, or call in and say, hey, I need to go to the bathroom. I need somebody to cover while I do that, right?
It's similar to the same, yes,
Sure. And I mean, we kind of talked about that. That's because that's how you run a responsible security outfit. The security downstairs in this courthouse, they can't leave that front door unmanned without having somebody cover them if they need to go to the bathroom, right? And you have
Yes.
to make somebody aware that you have to go to the bathroom and that you need coverage, correct?
yes,
So that can seem like asking permission, but really what it is asking for coverage to go, right?
yes,
Well, I mean, because otherwise, I mean, are you saying that they have to sit and hold it all day? You know, people would deny you permission, you may not use the restroom?
at the current situation, you can request someone to cover you, like you said, but in Moreno de la Cerda situation, they had to ask permission before they couldn't just ask a deputy that was available. They had to ask permission from like a supervisor that was in charge.
Like she responded to all the restroom requests, like they would have to call the constable and say, constable, may I use the bathroom?
Probably one of the sergeants that was in charge. There was several different people that were tasked to be in charge of them.
Right, but if they had proven themselves to be not trustworthy, can you see how maybe a sergeant assuring that there was coverage on the front would be necessary? Because the coverage at the security gate is the most necessary thing, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's a whole investigation and they get fired for lying. So they've proven themselves to be dishonest and untrustworthy. And so a dishonest and untrustworthy employee might have to go do a few extra steps that a trusted employee might have to do. You would agree with that?
Yes, I guess so.
Like if you didn't trust one of your people you might double check some of the things that they're turning in or some of the things they're doing where you wouldn't do that necessarily for an employee that you trusted. Right?
I would look at the paperwork.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, for most of us in the world, if you are untrustworthy, you've proven yourself to be untrustworthy or dishonest, you get fired and you don't work there. But in this world, they both prove themselves to be that way, and they still work there, right? According to the investigation.
According to the investigation.
Right. And I'm not saying you're personally saying it, but you know now that, I mean, that these are the facts. And so it's kind of like, you can imagine as a lieutenant, you have to fire somebody for being dishonest, and they come right back and you have to supervise them for the rest of the time. Would that be a comfortable situation for you as a supervisor?
I mean, I'd have to do it, comfortable or not, I guess.
You'd have to do it, but would it be comfortable for you as a supervisor to have to do that?
I mean, I guess not.
Right. They lie to your face, and then you fire them for it, and then some arbitrator says, no, they're right up under you again. Right? It's a difficult situation. And in a situation where you have a disgruntled employee who's mad about you firing them and causing problems underneath you, that can cause a whole lot of problems with your ability to administrate your job as a lieutenant in Precinct 2. You agree with that?
Yeah, I guess so.
Right? Because, and I mean, these are all common sense things. It's just sometimes in the world that we work in law enforcement, and that law enforcement works in, people who do bad things on the job end up getting reinstated, and then you have to find somewhere to put them. And that just happens sometimes. You would agree with that?
I guess so.
Whereas then if you're working at HEB and you lie and they fire you, it's a right to work state and you're gone, and you don't come back to HEB to work for the same boss that just fired you, right?
Yes.
And I'm asking you this because you're a supervisor and you're the longest tenured person there, and so you actually have experience supervising employees underneath you, and you have to deal with some of those employee relations. I'm sorry, we just need to pull up we think we got that pulled up. That's what it's awesome. Lieutenant, I'm just going to play you a piece of the recording. This is from his interview with Ranger Freeman.
Were you ever told not to talk to them?
Were you going to show it to me?
No, I don't think so.
What?
Were you going to?
Oh.
I tell you what, I can take a break.
Okay.
I can take a break. I didn't take a break earlier. It's 3:45. Let's take a 15-minute break. We'll resume at 4.
Yes, Your Honor.
And you can just show that to him while.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. No. But I think we're bringing him back in Thursday. We're bringing him back Thursday.
This is just a scenario.
Were you ever told not to talk to them? No, I don't think so. Okay, I don't think so. I don't think I was told not to talk to them because, but my conversations were brief with them. Yeah. Even though I knew them,
So that's, we're just going to play that.
Okay.
We're all right.
Oh, I can get up.
Grover. Oh, which is the one that Oscar did. Thank you for yeah, it's some guy and it's like a real person that moves into a trash can with the route.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Dude, he played it good. He's like, yes, sir. But it's hilarious.
You know, the thing is, you know, like, because people are so sensitive, they wanted to take that character away from, you know. It's like, Kiwi, that was what my, yeah, Oscar.
Is it okay? Yeah. He's grown.
So it's like, I take him away.
Yeah.
This is the reading room.
Yeah.
This is where you were sitting right now. Jam. Is that what you look at? Okay, and this other one is the J. This is the J. I know, but I wanted to get it more clear. I just show it. Okay, just wanted to look up. Yeah, I think, yeah, look at that and like the basket. You're right. This is all no? Okay, I mean, we're getting, but this one is the J.
The guy who played Sarah.
You know what, maybe I did that. That's what I thought. Because we're all working with one, but we'll get all of it. Well, you guys real fast. Do you have something down here, or do you need my laptop? I need my laptop.
And there are 1, 2, 3 contact with more teenagers, I think, like bigger.
I was supposed to spoke them again.
Is it? I never done it because I didn't know, like, you know, it just seemed like.
And then. That's easy to remember, right? Like easy peasy, okay. Thank you very much. Yes, yes. I just want to make sure because I'm gonna go over. Okay, okay.
It's like, they're trying to get as much done as they can today.
Oh, she's out.
You're going on vacation, right? No?
I am. Well, I'm not going anywhere. It's working vacation. But I have 90 hours using those.
Yeah,
So I didn't
yeah.
really what? Oh, no. I have a couple of day trips with family members,
Yeah.
but mostly I
Because
have chores.
you're retiring what, in February?
No, the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
You know, I was supposed to retire at the end of this month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had to bump back because of this.
It's-
And because my partner, in financial crimes, with the training here, is transferring to the field.
Oh.
So now I gotta train somebody else. So, yeah, because you can't learn financial crimes overnight.
Yeah.
I don't think you can learn it in a few months either, but hey, I'll do
So,
it.
so you got this time and then you have some other time coming up that you're gonna take off in December?
No, I'll probably have more use, you know what, I'm selling back max of vacation, that's why I'm gonna use the lose. I'm sure I'm gonna accrue some more, use or lose.
Yeah.
I'll just have to see how the code defense trial situates into the next few months. I'm really hoping it doesn't go. I really don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Poor Oscar though, he'll be the one stuck.
Is anybody gonna join them if you leave?
Oh, take my place?
Yeah, no, but like for that, let's say the, say the, code defendant goes, are you gonna be there as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know.
So far, they haven't let me off the hook, so it's still Oscar and I.
Okay.
Because right now, what we're proving out is essentially what's gonna happen to Garcia, because we're going on the ad perjury.
Yeah.
And it's just gonna have more witnesses because it'll be in front of the jury.
Yeah.
This is an abbreviated version.
Oh, wow.
Because I know that, I mean, as it is, we have, what, 18 or so witnesses. It'll be back up to a very long trial again. It's not really looking forward to that. You know, that's the problem with my cases, they're all long. There's nothing short, I don't have short trials. Financial crimes take forever too. It's all very tedious with exhibits. I always have so many exhibits because of bank records. And I'm just, brain's fine, my body just doesn't want to do it anymore. It's just, you know, I got sick during this trial. You guys probably didn't know that, but yeah, I was sick. I had to go get antibiotics and I didn't get a fever, but I was severely dehydrated.
Did not know that.
Yeah, well, it's because I have to talk too much. You can't drink my water. And then just the long hours, you know. I was only getting just a handful of hours of sleep.
Still celebrating?
What?
Still celebrating?
You know, I was really too tired. The next day I went to lunch with friends, and they wanted to drink, and I just really was so dehydrated, I couldn't. So really, no, I haven't.
You haven't really no vision?
No.
I was like,
Just-
oh, fuck them.
No, maybe when it's all over with.
Yeah. When it's all over with or just?
Well, this trial's over with maybe,
Yeah.
although we have somebody leaving our division and Thursday after work, we have a thing for them. Maybe I can celebrate a little
Just do it,
bit.
man, yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
It's like a service.
But you know, I'm not a big drinker anyway, so.
But you know what, like, for me, I'm like, I go home sometimes, like, I was never a big wine drinker until I actually freaking drank 2 glasses of wine and said, man, this actually feels good.
Yeah, kind of just relaxes.
Yeah, it relaxes you.
Yeah. it's
Yeah,
good.
but I'm more of a whiskey drinker.
Well, I'm a wine drinker too,
Yeah.
but if I drink hard liquor, it's tequila.
Nah, see, I can't do it. It's like, the one I stay away from is vodka. Vodka, I would never drink again. But for me, it's whiskey with ginger ale. And it's good. Yeah, it tastes really, really good.
I like cognac, but I'm not a whiskey drinker.
I'm more Jameson. I like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it just goes down smooth.
You know, the one thing I would really, that I don't drink, and it's kind of blasphemy when you live on a ranch, is beer.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody drinks beer on the ranch, and I have not acquired it, but it's whiskey.
Like, for me, when I was younger, it was like the girls were like, now that I'm older, I just feel like what beer does, it just blows me. It's like, I always feel bloated, like, and I can't do it. But, you know, if you have a good steak, you know, if you have a good steak, then beer goes really well with the steak. Like a lot.
What? Beer. Beer?
Yeah, beer steak. But,
A dark beer. Dark beer with a steak.
I'm not into dark beer. You know, when I was in Colorado, well, of course, Coors is big in Colorado.
I've been there, Golden,
Yeah. And so, yeah, I was in Golden, right? I was in Golden and we went to Breckenridge as well, ski.
Oh, well.
And someone just recommended, like, hey, let's eat some steak, right? Had some steak. And then some of the steak they had was bison, right?
Oh, yeah.
And for some reason, my cousin, he goes, they 4 rounds of Coors, because there's 4 of us, right? I was like, Coors? Like, you know, it's good. Like, and then, man, for some reason, that Coors went so well with the steak. I was like, I'm in love with it.
That was the rich man's beer back in the days. Coors was good. Schlick was good back in the days.
Did you?
No cursing quarter.
Yeah. Olympia, I used to drink Olympia.
You probably know, like, Red Stripe.
Oh, Rister.
Yeah, the branch manager drinks that a lot.
No, but Coors, I was surprised how well Coors Light actually went with the steak.
And when we were
I
broke,
couldn't believe it.
Schaefer beer.
Uh-huh.
A case of Schaefer beer was under
Oh, yeah.
$10 in California. Everybody, well, I just ordered for tomorrow.
Yeah, when I was in high school, and everyone was a high school party, they had a Milwaukee Vela.
Oh, yeah.
And Natty like,
Oh, he is? What's your partner?
it's like drinking.
Okay.
Barrientes.
The big deal right now is the big little ultra. When I was in high school, it was.
I have friends.
Yeah.
That was a good, what was that? Big little? Oh, yeah. And now the big thing is big little ultra. Like the diet. Aquí viene la corte de distrito de 226. Sección. When they do look. You hear what they call my name? Right now. If you hear how I answer and go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Sometimes I used to do this. But since they're all like. Con gafas. I don't know if that is the best.
I've heard it. That's a singer, right?
No. Con gafas. No, con gafas is a way kind of like. Con gafas is like. Oh. And then hey, vamos a ir a Refin. A lot of people don't know what that is. Vamos a ir a Refin. Because being broken would be like, hey, what's about Refin? Oh, and then when you see it, what's talking about? Is there a refinery or something? They're like, no, that's good for you. Refin. But we use these words like most people they don't know. I still remember the day I went to the crime scene. I'm like, man, okay, that turns around. That turns around. That means somebody's lying. The cat. Somebody let the cat out.
Oh.
Okay, so somebody's locking the cat. But this guy is like, okay, what's the matter? Somebody's lying. They were all like, but sure enough, the guy was lying. Or No. For me, it's far. But la mamá del Lugo. That's where the donkey's born is. La mamá del Lugo, no. A lot of people, they go to the north side. Yeah. Fucking press, but.
Oh, yeah, it's over there, it's right there on, like, you know what,
I don't even know what that is.
so, okay, so from where you live, it's 14, okay, you know where the range is at? It's out there?
Yeah.
Okay, from your house, no, it's, you know, it's right before stopping.
Across the street,
That becomes 21.
Turn towards Stinson Field.
right where the.
Oh, okay, you turn towards, okay.
Stinson Field. And then you get like bushes, the river is running down there.
Espada. Like you, no, like, it's a, yeah, so you can exit Espada, you can exit Espada. You know, that bridge at the highway?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't be, people inside 14, you know, so 14 can take that road, and it's gonna be right there, right, actually, it's restaurant.
Yeah, I get mine
Really? Oh, I
I
like it.
actually had this one back when we were in high school, we would go to the races out there. Financial Lake.
Yeah.
So the land crossings at the market.
Yeah.
There used to be like this, There's a one. Yeah. This back on Sunday. Here was a higher, he would make his own song. Anyways, they have them play there. They haven't played since we were in high school.
No, I like going to see Spanish, because they play like all and they don't, you know, granted, they don't play the entire song, because sometimes they'll just play it. Sometimes they'll be like, and everybody's and then all of a sudden they go to something else.
And there was another one which also back when we go out.
Oh, yes, sir.
And so they play everywhere now. He went from like, there's a song he used to play a lot,
Is he well though?
but he's like a cover band, but now he's playing like old stuff.
Oh, he would hit me or what?
Yeah,
Does he
he
love
used
to
to play,
voice? Because that's how most people do it. When they start using their voice, because they can't do the high pitch anymore, they go to like singers, like James Taylor, and Neil Young.
yeah, because I remember like, laughing to them.
Oh, but they can't do the, it's like, because it's long. They can't do no half pitch. There's other ones.
Yes, I was like, good.
I don't know what the guy did to me. I don't know. That's how I knew my fish were.
You know, the thing is, they're still, I know, man, they're still gonna be my
For 30 years, I've known him.
but they were awesome.
Oh, shit. Everybody else, they all together. They all ran his car, comes out, and they got us getting out of the wall. it's a two-seater and like 3 or 4 kids come out of it. I'm like, the company they're very cute guys. I'm like, man, imagine the when I was younger, be honest with TJ.
TJ Maxx.
I would, the corner, make him face the corner. I'll watch it, watch the corner.
It's changed because she's like a little bit further down to the right.
Oh. Should be in.
And then further down, the neighborhood.
That's where you know that area where we used to call it the main court.
Yeah, because it's that one that you go in and it's like a little square like this where.
All right.
And your witness? Thank you, you may be seated. Let's get your witness on.
Yes, Your Honor, I played it, he acknowledges that that's him and everything else, so now it's just to complete the impeachment, I'd like to play it in court, and then I have it as Defendant's Exhibit 26, not to be entered into evidence or substantive, but just to show the court, or the appellate court, what the impeachment was. We just have it as just a clip that is relevant to this testimony.
I have 29 next.
Oh. Sorry.
For the defense?
Yes, so scratch 26, and it'll be 29.
So this is being made part of the record and sealed for appellate purposes?
Yes, Your Honor, it's just, because it's for impeachment, we acknowledge that it's not for substantive evidence, but just for impeachment of the witness. And I can play it here, he's already heard it. To remind the court that the statement of impeachment was that the witness had testified that he had been instructed not to talk to Moreno de la Cerda. And Defense Exhibit 29 is a recording from his interview with Ranger Freeman in 2019.
So are you going to ask him?
Were you?
Are you going to ask him?
I did before.
They're on the record.
Oh, yeah. And so, Lieutenant Najera, we had spoken before about the fact that now you have testified that you were instructed not to talk to Moreno de la Cerda. I have played you what's now been identified as Defense 29, and you acknowledge that that is your voice and Ranger Freeman's voice in an interview back in 2019 that he conducted.
Yes.
Okay.
We're told not to talk to them. No, I don't think so. Okay, I don't think so. I don't think I was told not to talk to them because, but my conversations were brief with them. Yeah. Even though I knew them,
So, Lieutenant, you would acknowledge that back when you spoke to Ranger Freeman in 2019, he asked you if you were told not to talk to them, and your answer was, no, I don't think so. I don't remember being told not to talk.
Yeah, it sounds like I was unsure on how I was answering it back then. I said, I don't think so, I don't remember, on the video. I was maybe unsure how to answer when he asked me that question back then.
Yeah, I acknowledge, and I think just the point that we're trying to make is that, or that I'm trying to make is that back then when he was asking you, that was close in time to when all of this was going on. That was back in 2019 when he was interviewing you for this statement, right?
Right.
So now 3 years have passed, right? And so at the time, when you were asked the direct question, were you instructed not to talk to them? If you were instructed not to talk to them, you would have said, yes, I was instructed not to talk to them.
So back then when I answered, I guess I was unsure how to answer that question. But I know that there was an order for us not to talk to them while they're out there on duty.
Okay. Okay, but I guess what I'm saying.
Maybe it
is-
wasn't directed, maybe not to me, but I know that there was a directive out there not to talk to them.
Well, but on direct examination, you said that you were personally ordered not to talk to them on direct, right?
What?
On direct examination, I wrote down, she said, have you ever been directed not to speak to Deputy Moreno or De La Cerda? You said, yes. I was directed not to do that.
That's what I said, yes.
And then what he was asking you back then was, were you directed not to talk to them? And you said, no, you don't think so. You don't know what time that you were directed not to talk to them.
Yeah. That's just because I wasn't unsure how to answer that, because I knew there was a directive out there.
Well, I mean, you would agree that the question is clear. Were you asked not to talk to them? That was a clear question, referencing Moreno de la Cerda. You agree with that? That was a clear, the question was clear.
The question was clear.
All right. And when you responded to that clear question, you said, no, I don't think so. I just know I didn't talk to her much, but I wasn't directed. Or, no, I don't think so. That was what we just heard.
That's correct.
Okay. I'll pass it.
No further questions.
Can you step down?
Yes, Your Honor, we may need him subject to recall.
Okay. Officer Najera, you are subject to recall, so you are excused for now. Thank you. Next witness.
I will call Officer Jason Castanon.
Any questions?
That mic. It'll be right up on it. Okay.
Great. You were sworn in yesterday, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you remain under the same oath. State, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. What is your rank and name?
Rank, just deputy sheriff. Name, Jason Castanon. Castanon.
And where are you employed?
Comal County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been employed there?
Since January.
Of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long have you been a peace officer?
Since 2015.
And what was the first job you held as a peace officer?
SRO for Northeast ISD.
And at some point, did you leave that position?
Yes.
And when was that?
2018.
And where did you go from there?
Precinct 2.
And Constable Vela hired you?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you were first hired at Precinct 2, were you full-time or reserve?
I was full-time.
And what were your duties at that time?
I was part of the traffic unit, but we assisted civil as needed.
Did you know Leonicio Moreno?
I knew him through mutual friends, yes.
So you knew him outside of the workplace?
Yes,
Did you consider him a friend?
yes,
And did you know Chris De La Cerda?
yes.
And was that from the workplace or also outside the workplace?
Outside the workplace.
And so you began in, do you remember what month in 2018 you might have began at precinct?
Maybe June.
June?
Mhm.
Do you recall a time when Moreno and De La Cerda had lost their jobs at the precinct?
I do, I just don't know exactly when.
Okay, do you recall that they got their jobs back?
Yes.
Were you present when Moreno was sworn in after he came back?
No, it was not.
What's the next exhibit number?
112.
I'm going to hand you what's marked as State's Exhibit 12. Is that your report?
It is.
And what date was that report prepared?
August 28, 2018.
And what was the subject matter of the report without reading it? Well, I mean, you can read it silently. I just don't want you to read it out loud.
Okay.
So what was the subject of the report?
In general?
Yeah.
Hazing.
Hazing. So what was the purpose of you writing this report? If you recall.
The purpose, I don't know.
Do you recall who directed you to do this report?
I do not recall exactly.
Okay, and so basically you filled out the report for what reason? I mean, what were you explaining in the report?
That I was never part of hazing.
Okay. State moves to admit State's Exhibit 112.
Thank you. 112 is admitted.
No.
Were you aware if Leonisto Moreno had made any EOC complaint about hazing?
I heard about it.
Okay, but you did not have any personal knowledge of it?
I didn't know exactly what was going on there.
Okay. Do you recall an incident in February, on February 28th of 2019 at the Family Dollar Store?
I don't know the exact date, but Family Dollar Store, yes.
And I don't have any report made by you. Do you recall whether or not you made a report?
I do not believe I did. I was there, but I do not believe I made a report.
And from your recollection, why was it that you were familiar with the Family Dollar Store incident on that date?
I believe we were called there for, I think the constable's son got accused of stealing something. So I think the traffic unit, which is what I was with, I think they directed us to go over there.
And how did you receive that call to report? If you remember. I know you don't have a report to refresh your memory.
Yeah, I mean, it would have either been phone call or radio, not sure.
Okay, and how many units, if you recall, showed up?
Traffic was usually 4 to 5 people maybe.
And you each in your own vehicle?
Yes.
Did you participate in any of the interviewing of any individuals at the Family Dollar Store?
I was there when they talked to the manager. I forgot who talked to the manager, but I was there.
What was your purpose for being on scene?
I don't know. I showed up because I was directed to.
And do you recall who directed you to show up?
I think the constable directed all of us to show up.
A little bit of speculation. He's already said he's got a limited memory of this and how he thinks.
Yeah, speculation is sustained.
Do you recall how long you were there?
Where's?
How long were you at the Family Dollar store?
Maybe 20, 30 minutes.
And then you were directed to leave?
We left, yeah. I don't know if we're direct. I mean, we left. I think we all left at the same time.
Okay. Was anybody arrested or anything like that?
No.
Do you recall arresting Moreno on April 30th, 2019?
The arrest, yes, the exact date, I do not recall.
I have your report. I'll give that to you. Stacy, is it the 113, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm handing you what's marked as State's Exhibit 113. If you could take a look at that. Is that your report?
Yes.
And what is the date of the incident?
April 30th, 2019.
And what is the subject matter of your report?
Wanted person.
And who is the wanted person?
Leo Moreno.
And is this what we're talking about, the arrest?
Yes.
And you can use that report to refresh your memory as I ask you questions.
So how did it come about that you effected the arrest of Leo Moreno?
I was on duty. We were on duty. It was still part of the work day. And we were called back to the office. I don't remember knowing, if I remember, I knew what it was about. We showed up, and then once we showed up, we were made aware of what was going on as far as the warrant.
And what were you made aware of?
That there was a warrant for Leo Moreno, and we were going to look for the places that he frequents, the gym or his house.
What was the offense he was being arrested for?
I think it was possibly perjury of some sort.
Were you given a briefing on the offense and the details of the offense?
May have been, but I don't remember too much. Perjury, and maybe he did something or another that we got to that point, but anything further than that, I don't remember.
And were you working with somebody that day?
I had a partner at the time of the arrest, yes.
And who was that partner?
Barloco.
What is his first name?
Stephen Barloco.
And he was riding with you in the same vehicle?
Yes,
And in fact, it was his first day on the job?
I believe so.
Who directed you to actually be the arresting officer?
We were broken up into teams. My team was instructed to go to Gold's Gym. I think it's Tezel and Gilbo, because that's where he was known to frequent. So.
Was he off that day, off work that day?
Who's that?
Moreno?
I guess. To be honest with you, I didn't even know he worked with us that time. I never saw him.
Okay, and is it because, how long had it been since you had seen him in the workplace?
I don't want to guess. I don't know
Okay,
exactly.
that's fine. Do you recall how many teams were participating in finding or locating Moreno?
I don't know the exact number, possibly, I know probably 5 at the very minimum.
And when you refer to a team, what do you mean by a team?
2-man unit.
So there have been 5 2-man units?
Yes, I had a two-man unit, and I think others did, just because of the nature of the one person.
Okay. Were you briefed on any safety concerns that he would be violent or resist?
I think we were just told that he knows martial arts. I think that might have been it.
And you were familiar with him outside of the workplace as well.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know him to be a violent person?
No.
Were you concerned in locating him that there would be a problem?
No.
So you said you were directed to go to Gold's Gym. How many teams showed up at Gold's Gym?
They were scattered. We were scattered out. Like I said, I want to say maybe at least 5, but we were scattered in the area. I think they were looking to see if his vehicle was there.
And do you recall if you were wearing a body-worn cam that day?
I was.
And have you had a chance to review that body-worn cam video footage?
I did.
It's 112, right, Judge?
113.
We're 114 now?
Just marked, they marked 114, they just marked 113, the last one.
Oh, that's his report.
113.
Yes.
Well, we're gonna, he's muted, we would like to play, so yes, we're opting, State's Exhibit 114 into evidence.
That's hearsay.
Sorry.
And Sixth Amendment confrontation.
Sorry, hold on.
Take your time.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said object to hearsay under the Sixth Amendment confrontation clause. My understanding is this body cam footage contains statements that Moreno made to the deputies at the time, which were statements made to law enforcement, which are testimonial statements. The prosecution has I guess, informed the court that they would not be calling Moreno as a witness or his servant. So with that understanding, those statements are violating the confrontation clause.
State.
I would say that that is a present sense impression of the individual on the scene. However, if you so choose to exclude the audio, then we can show the video without the audio.
I would agree. There's no testimonial. There's no testimonial objection to the audio. The video is just. I can't have it. There's no objection to the video itself.
And Your Honor, as well, when Leo Moreno, this is a video of Leo Moreno getting arrested in Gold's Gym. It is his excited utterance from being approached by all the officers.
Your Honor, I understand that there are exceptions to the hearsay rule potentially, but there's no exception to the hearsay rule that overcomes a confrontation clause objection of the Sixth Amendment.
So why don't we do, let's get a redacted or muted version of the video, call that 114A, and that's what we'll admit for purposes of this punishment phase, and Exhibit 114 will go up on appeal with the full audio.
Yes, Your Honor, and for the sake of time, we could just play it on mute in the courtroom and then replace, can add 114.
That's fine. We can, any objection to objecting 114 and 114A?
No, Your Honor.
All right, let's do it that way.
So there are two different videos on here. One is when the officer arrives on the scene, and the other one is, and then he enters the facility, and the other one is when he brings Moreno out and places him in the official cruiser. So we'll begin with the first one. Is the audio down?
I'm gonna mute it.
So since there's no audio, could you please describe what we're looking at without saying what anybody said to you?
Me?
You, yes.
It looks like we're just getting ready to possibly either relocate him or we're getting ready to go look at him.
And so who was that individual that was briefly on the scene on the screen?
Captain Garcia.
Captain Garcia?
Mhm.
And at this time, are you aware whether or not Moreno is in Gold's Gym? Or do you recall?
We were only made aware once we drove around. I think someone else located his vehicle, it wasn't even us. So we were only made aware once they saw his vehicle outside.
So you were pretty sure he was inside the facility?
Yes, because his truck was outside.
Okay. I think during this time, you're just preparing to go inside. It takes a while before you get inside the facility, correct?
Right.
Do you have a problem fast forwarding without a redaction of that?
No.
So yes. Oh, wait, yeah, back up. So are you moving your vehicle a little closer to the facility?
Yeah, we're at the front door at that point.
Okay. So can you describe what's happening here?
We walked in and I've been there a couple of times, so I know that the weight section was on the left side. And I think I remember seeing him in the very back there. I think he starts walking our way once he sees us. There's quite a bit of us there.
And who is that talking to you?
That's Leo. And he kind of asked what was.
Oh, don't
or
say.
don't
what
say?
he-
Okay.
Yeah, you can't say what he said.
Okay.
And so who is the officer to his left on screen?
Barloco.
Now, I see other officers. Can you, I don't know if you can identify them, but are all those precinct officers?
Yes.
And so what are you doing at this time?
They're advising him what we're there for and letting him know to put his hands behind his back, pretty much. They're advising him of the warrant.
And who is that actually placing the cuffs on him?
Barloco.
So how many other officers, I know that's hard to tell because the camera's moving around, but how many other officers are you seeing?
And I believe there was more outside, but just there, I mean, I think I saw 6, maybe 7.
And so what's occurring now?
Just making space in the backseat.
right there to the right, is that also an official precinct vehicle?
Yeah, the all black were pretty much admin vehicles.
Do you have any idea who's in that one?
Not 100% sure.
Okay, that's fine. And what's going on here?
I'm probably looking for the booking sheets. The forms that are required to book somebody in.
I see. Did Leo Moreno have any type of bag with him?
I
Property?
think he had his gym bag.
And what was being done with his gym bag, if you recall?
That I don't remember. I'm not 100% sure.
That's fine. Who is that individual to the right?
Captain Garcia.
The bag that is in Barloco's hand, is that Moreno's bag, or whose bag is that?
I'd have to see it again. Yeah, it looks like a gym bag.
And what's happening here?
It looks like he's just grabbing his ID, Leo's ID from his wallet.
Are there any rules of the jail that you're not permitted to take property like that?
A large gym bag, preferably not, just maybe a couple of things, but a large gym bag with all different types of stuff. It's not, I don't prefer that.
So if this gym bag was not taken with him, do you know what happened to it? Do you recall?
I think since his vehicle was there, I think they may have offered him to leave it in his truck.
Okay. That's the first video. We'll move to the second video, which it has 4 separate files. Just start from the beginning. So this appeared to continue from what the last video stopped?
Yes.
Is that as long as it is?
No.
No.
Oh.
I know it's hard to tear yourself away from that.
Well, they're still having technical difficulties.
Are they?
Yeah, and honestly, I was just trying to get my stuff updated for. Everyone's asking questions.
Step back a little bit and meet you a little more.
Loud and clear. Yeah, 321. Michelle Barrientes Vela was not only convicted on the tampering of evidence charges, but she was also lashing out against some of her employees, thank you, who accused her of sex discrimination. And that's what most of the testimony focused on today. Barrientes Vela was back in the courtroom, surrounded by supporters, including her family. And today we heard deputies testify about how they were instructed to treat their colleagues, Deputy Leonicio Moreno and Chris De La Cerda. 2018, Moreno and De La Cerda got. Okay. In 2018, Moreno and De La Cerda got their jobs back after suing Vela following an alleged hot tub incident. The two lost their jobs, but when they were reinstated, deputies today testified that Barrientes Vela asked them to stay away from the two. Here's how former Deputy Gabriel Monrod described it to prosecutors.
The flashlight on your phone is on.